Is anybody out there, Jeff, that's coming in?
Yeah, Marissa's out there. Susan Warrant is. Hello, Susan. How are you? Good to see you. Jack's coming in. Marissa, Jack and Marissa. Lawrence and Marissa. Kind of chatting.
By the way.
Yeah. So you're gonna, that's when you're gonna drop to, right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, talk about one isn't on here. So
Which
we're
meeting?
We'll just walk right through it.
Scarves.
All right.
I have one at home, but it's so massive now I can't bring it in.
Needs more studying.
Yeah.
That's the point.
All right, go ahead and get started because I think we're live now. So it is 7:08 according to the clock there on March 4th. At this point in time, we'll open the Board of Selectmen meeting.
Pledge allegiance.
Yep. Pledge allegiance, everyone. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening, everybody. We have, excuse me, a few board and committee openings. One opening for the Board of Health. The Town Hall Building Committee still has 2 openings if you're interested. In the Capital Committee, which is newly formed, we have 4 openings for that. And now we have a section for public comment, 3 minutes on topics not already on the agenda. If anyone wishes to speak, by all means, come forward.
Good evening. I come before you as a resident of the town. I'm not representing the Board of Selectmen in my statement. My hope is to be as transparent as possible and allow the voters to decide what has transpired. I am speaking to you this evening as the town clerk has filed a complaint against me with the Board of Selectmen, town manager, and town council. As a member of the Board of Selectmen and an elected official, I answer to the public. I must be willing to put my thoughts out into the public eye to face whatever may come. Some of the comments residents offer can be encouraging, while others may be harsh, to say the least. Not all of my ideas will be widely accepted, I know that, but I will present them nonetheless, despite the criticism I may endure for doing so. I will research the topic and listen to feedback, all in the hopes to benefit the town. My goal as a Board of Selectmen member was to bring facts to the residents to represent them fairly and allow for equitable treatment of our employees. To be an effective member, you have to be willing to face criticism when trying to change long-standing traditions. I guess I could stand idly by and allow injustices to persist, but that is not what this role requires. I took an oath to act in the best interest of the town, and I serve in that capacity proudly. My recommendation for changing the town clerk's elected position to an appointed position has never been personal. It is very unfortunate that my efforts have been misconstrued by some. My only intention was to bring the town clerk's position to be more in line with similar positions. This is not the first time this matter has been discussed, but sadly the town was not proactive enough to make the change when our last clerk retired. Had we done so, we could have avoided all of this nonsense surrounding the matter of it being of personal nature. I would like the board, the members of the audience, and residents who may be watching at home to know that my efforts are genuine. It is you, the taxpayer, to whom I am accountable, and I take that role seriously. I asked for a warrant article to be placed on this year's annual town meeting to see if the voters would approve the changing of the town clerk's position to an appointed position when her term expires next year. In doing so, I asked my fellow board members and members of the Finance Committee in open session to weigh the pros and cons of an elected versus an appointed position. I had no agenda. I don't benefit from this personally. By bringing this forward, I subjected myself to ridicule and accusations from those who are unaware of what has been transpiring. I believe my role as a town official should be to present facts to the resident and then allow the residents to decide for themselves what they believe is in the best interest of the town. A request to review the structure of our town has taken on a whole new mission by our town clerk. She has publicly and brutally attacked me and my character. In doing so, she fails to identify what I have done that has been humiliating, harassing, or erroneous. She has threatened to contact attorneys if the dialogue surrounding her position continues. I had not shared with the community errors or anything that I had found with the town clerk. Mrs. Della Russo chose to make this personal and accuse me of things I have not done. I now feel I must put all the facts before the residents. Mrs. Della Russo's statements appear to be made only to confuse the real issue at hand. The town clerk is correct that the vast majority of my interactions with her have been in writing via email. I have chosen not to correspond with her via phone or in person because in the past she has deliberately misrepresented the interactions. Our emails are subject to public record, and I did write, I present them here this evening. I'd asked copies to make made public for the emails, but I guess they were chosen not to be copied and made public. From those emails, you can decide if my interactions with Ms. Della Russo have been professional. I consider the allegations made by her to be false, libelous, and I am seeking an immediate retraction. I ask you to please read through the conversations of the emails, see the information presented by the town clerk and myself. In performing my role, a number of issues were uncovered in the clerk's office. I had chosen to deal with them administrative and internally. When the leaders in our community are bringing forward what they believe is honest information for residents to define the community's destiny, but cower under the threat of litigation, we all lose. In closing, I will say I know of no other community that has an appointed clerk and chosen to switch it to an elected position. The only person that is benefiting from this position being elected is the town clerk. I'd be happy if anyone wanted to contact me with any questions.
All right, if there's anyone else that wishes to add anything on topic tonight or off? At any point during the meeting, if you have something to say, please come forward to the microphone and we'll recognize you. All right, so on to our agenda, actually on to our reports. Selectmen reports, Jeff, we'll start down the end with you if you're all right with that.
Yes, I am all right with that, but really I haven't had anything since last week.
That's fine. It's been quick. We're big turnaround here. Scott, anything from you?
Just we'll get to the warrant and we've drafted summaries, so we'll get to those once we get into the agenda items.
Allison, anything from you for an update?
Thanks to the DPW and the employees for doing the great cleanup. It's a shame we had to wait till March to get to this storm, and I'll leave the rest of my comments for the warrant articles.
All right. Bill, anything from you?
Okay. I know we have an Affordable Housing Trust meeting tomorrow night. Everything else, I think we can address in the warrant articles.
All right. I really don't have much since we just met last week, other than that the rec department's spring and summer programming started today, camp, pool, etc. So be on the lookout if you've got young ones that want to be involved in the rec program, even older folks. Our pickleball program is nothing to shake a stick at. Joe, update from you?
I have a very brief report, and I'm not going to read it all. As Jeff said, there's only been a week since the last meeting. So we received word from the state that our Chapter 90 allocation for MassDOT has been approved. We're set to get a little more than $242,000 this year. The new Open Space and Recreation Committee has contacted us. They're planning to meet next week. The date and time has not been set yet, but please pay attention to the calendar. It will be up there, and they'll begin meeting shortly with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, as well as MEPC has agreed to provide them some technical assistance in helping to finish the open space and recreation plan. I have begun negotiations with 2 of the 3 unions with contracts that are up, and I am scheduled to exchange initial proposals with the 3rd union this week. It's early. There's nothing really to report, just that things have been civil and nice and pleasant, and hopefully we can keep going that direction. Some progress is being made at 86 Mile Road. The owners provided an update to Patrick Reffett this past weekend and have indicated that they will be seeking their rough inspection from the building inspector this week. The owners claim to have completed the work that was outlined by the building inspector during his last visit to the property, and they have secured the house. And I checked off that I was going to thank the DPW as well. Thank you, Allison, for recognizing them there. They did a great job. It was a quick-moving storm, but they dumped a lot of snow. For folks who are wondering if it seemed to take your street a little longer to get cleared today, it was largely because we had, at one point during the storm, 2 pieces of equipment went down with equipment issues, and so we did eventually get to everybody and cleaned up all the streets, but 1 or 2 streets were a little slower.
Any power outages from the
No
storm?
power outages reported.
Great.
I don't think there are any.
Heavy snow, so.
Heavy snow, and it seems like the tree trimming's helping.
Good.
So.
I'll add one other thing before we get started in your packets, and for the folks at home, the League of Women Voters of Hamilton Wenham is presenting its 4th annual Civics Bee, Thursday, March 14th at 7 p.m. at the Miles River Middle School. Space is limited, so enter your team now. Fun evening of civics trivia, special guests and prizes. I've yet to go. I'm sad to say I've always had a prior commitments, but from what I hear, everyone that's been involved in it and gone to either participate or watch it says it's been really an amazing experience. So please go, even if you're not going to be participating in it. It's worth it. And now on to our agenda. We have the 2019 Annual Town Meeting Warrant Review, article discussion.
One run or something that was supposed to be on last week, and it wasn't on last week, and wasn't there some event that didn't make the packet last week? Joe?
We decided, Sean, that is, decided not to have anything on this. It didn't have anything to do
So
with
do it
the
next time?
warrant.
Yeah, we're
So it'll
okay
be-
with that.
and That runs not until May.
Okay, so next
It'll be on in 2
Yeah,
weeks.
we pushed it a little bit. Okay, so, sorry. Article discussion, summary discussion, and possible vote in support of the following articles, if we so choose to tonight. So, everyone, when we kind of last meeting, divvied up, writing some summaries. Most people, we should have some printed out in the packet here. If you haven't printed it out, maybe Joe can print it out if you have it. We'll kind of discuss them a little bit, see if there's anything that needs tweaking. The sooner we get these done, the sooner we can get them to the FinCom and move on with everything. So the first ones were the planning board articles, of which Bill said he would work on. We have the update to the inclusionary zoning bylaw, update to cell tower bylaw to include small cell tower language, etc., and an update to the to the signage bylaw. So if you look in your packets too, we have warrant summaries. These are just got yours in here, Bill.
Yeah, so we can start with mine.
I think they're a little farther towards the back of your packets.
Yeah, so the last group of pages is, are the 3 bylaws, and then my write-up, which just says Town of Hamilton on the top of it, just like that.
So if you're looking at it here,
So these are the summaries you'd want
Yeah.
included on the warrant.
This is my draft, yeah.
Okay.
So the first one you have is the update to the inclusionary zoning bylaw. So that's number 2 on my memo. It's the last 4 pages, so go all the way to the back. So my memo is somewhere in here. I got messed up in this right, but.
Thank you.
which one are we looking at, Bill? You just want to hold it
This sheet
with the seal on it. This one.
with the CL's Town of Hamilton, so we're
Okay.
on number 2, sorry, which says inclusionary housing.
Okay.
So summary is that the article seeks typo there, but seeks to change 3 items. So the first item is to add a definition to our zoning bylaw, which is AMI. So currently, right now, we refer to the AMI, but we don't define the AMI, so we just want to add the definition to the zoning bylaw.
Right, so definition of area, medium
Yeah.
income, et cetera. Okay.
The next one is we're going to change the fee in lieu, because currently, right now in our bylaw, it's 2 times 80% AMI, which right now is 81,100, and we're going to change it to 3 times, which so it basically adds 81,100 to the formula for payment in lieu of.
Right, that's good.
Okay, so amend the formula for fee in lieu of building affordable units currently at 2 times 80% AMI, area median income, for a family of 4, as determined by U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, would be changed to 3 times 80% of AMI, as determined by HUD. This would increase the fee by approximately $81,100
Per unit.
per unit, so we can add that in.
Yeah, but per unit at the end there.
Okay.
And then the third one is to eliminate the option in existing bylaw to build affordable housing units within senior housing, as state law and DHCC guidance does not allow these units to be age restrictive. So we basically have to amend our bylaw to be current with state and DHCC. So we really don't have a discussion with that. We have to sort of update it.
Well, can't we change it from a 55 to a 62 limit, and then we are in accordance with the state? As
Yeah,
far
I
as I
remember it
understand
changing the ceiling, right?
They
Or
changed the ceiling from 55, and our senior housing bylaw says 55. When I've spoken to the state, they said if it's 62 and over, you can still have that age restriction. So I think you have to decide which one you want, not necessarily throw it all out.
Okay, so the last time I spoke to Patrick about this, he was telling me that DHCD had said that our affordable unit, if it's part of the housing development, it couldn't be age restricted at all, just the affordable. So I will check with Patrick tomorrow
I
to
see
see
what
if
you're
that's
saying.
the case, which is why we were accepting on Cannerbrook a payment in lieu of, because we wanted to preserve the age restriction throughout Cannerbrook, which DHCD told us we couldn't do.
All right, that makes sense.
And I'll make a note here, I will sort of go back, I have a note here above these that says planning board vote on the 19th, so they're not gonna vote on these on the 19th, so these could possibly change based on what they vote on the 19th, but currently if they voted on all of them as they are, without changes, these would be accurate, but that's why I included them in. So the number 2 refers to, there's a piece of paper, but this piece of paper has A, B, C, D, these are the bylaw changes. So I refer to 4, but the bylaw change is actually 3. The reason is because 2 of them are the same one. One of them eliminates 2 times and adds 3 times. So it's really the same thing. They said they have to do a separate line for it.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're saying.
So it's 3 items, but it's 4 lines to describe
Right,
3 items.
right.
Because you have to eliminate and then add.
Right.
So we'll look into that tomorrow, maybe, Donna. They're meeting tomorrow, but they meet again on the 19th. I think just by the 19th, we have to decide if it's a 55 versus 62 or. The other item was the.
Do you want to hold just 1
Yeah.
second, Bill? Do we want, I'm just thinking of so we're not jumping all
Okay.
around here. I was kind of going by the agenda, but when I'm looking at the warrant, we're kind of jumping around a little
Yeah.
bit. Do you want to kind of just go through the warrant, and as we hit each one, we'll talk about the item a little bit, and then talk about the summary? I mean, that might be kind of,
Okay.
tick it right down the line then. Does that make sense to everybody?
vote on it,
Say
yeah.
we're not kind of jumping
Yeah,
around
no,
a
that's
little
good.
bit.
Could I also ask too, we have Marissa here to answer questions about the financial actions
Yeah.
articles, and she's the only staff member that's here that,
All right,
you
let's
know,
do that first then.
probably wouldn't need to be here for most of the rest of this.
So let's start with the
go
things that
into
might
that
concern
thing, and
Marissa,
then we
and then
can
we'll
let her-
kind of go back and we'll walk right
Then
through
she
the
can
whole
go
thing.
when she's
I'm
done.
not offended by that.
Okay.
Makes sense to me.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so, what do you want to start with, and then the prior year bills?
Yeah, so the prior year bills.
All right, so Article 2-1. I'm assuming 1-1, 1-2, 1-3 are fine with everybody. There's
Standard.
kind of standard
Yeah.
stuff. So 2-1 prior year bills,
We have, we believe, 1 bill. Yeah, come on, Marissa. Thank you.
and on your packets in the warrant, it's blank at the moment because we haven't kind of finalized it all.
We'll be getting
Maybe.
that information into it.
Hi, Marissa, welcome.
Hello.
Thank you for coming.
So by doing that on the warrant, it actually kind of goes through all the financial articles first anyway.
Right.
So if we start with the prior year bills, so as far as I know, there's only 1 bill that it's been brought to my attention. It's actually a Casella bill. It's for $5,750. And this was actually an accounting error on their part. They actually never sent us the invoice, so we never received this invoice. We just recently got it, I want to say maybe 3 weeks ago, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, and it was brought to our attention that they had an error on their part and they never billed us. I believe it was a leaf pickup for the $5,750. So that's,
This goes back to last spring, so the bill's
Yeah.
almost a year old.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not thrilled with it.
Yeah, future contracts, we should have a
I
sunset
I would-
clause on when they can bill.
You know, I'm not.
Do we
one
have
to
anything
look-
like that in our contracts now?
Have to look at someone's contract, I don't know.
We put that in our contracts with our vendors.
We should
Don't bill
look
it.
at that and see.
Goes away.
I'd recommend that we keep it on here for now, but I think Don and I
Yeah.
will look into the contract and see
Yeah.
if there's a way for us to contest it, because this is
That's
their
egregious in the time,
non-performance,
right?
not ours.
Yeah, that's not our problem.
You know, I personally believe that, you know, bills of a prior year are usually cleaned up at special time meeting for, you know,
Right.
bills that you got in August instead of June 30th and you
Right.
didn't anticipate. This is way, way past just a couple months. And, you know, personally, I don't see any reason that we should make them whole for their mistake. But that's, let's look at the contract and make sure we have legal footing to stand on that before I
Okay,
recommend to withdraw it.
all right. Any other comments on that one? We'll have Joe and Donna look into the contract and
If we put that into, I suggest we decide to vote on it, but also consider it for consent, even though consent requires, I think if it includes this, it needs to be 9/10.
9/10.
Like, okay. What?
4/5 for annual.
Oh, okay, so 80% of the folks got to say
you got
it's
in here, too.
okay, so, see what
I
else
think,
comes up, but it's
I think,
$5,000.
yeah, I think we could, all right, so I'll write consent if,
I move that the Board of Selectmen recommend favorable action, Article 2-1.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, unanimous.
Are we supposed to record, did you record exactly how everybody voted, Mary Alice? Because that is going in the warrant. That's one of the things we agreed to last
Right.
time.
Not unanimous. You have to,
That last one was not unanimous?
Oh,
no,
if
if
it
it's not
was, but
unanimous. If
we-
it is unanimous, it doesn't matter, but if
Right.
it isn't unanimous, you gotta read it. Yeah.
Moving on to 2-2, the compensation classification table.
So the compensation classification table, the first draft was actually included in the green budget book that you had. I think that we just made a couple of updates, one of them being including the patent director on the table. So just minor things if we come across that we missed, or adding a note on the bottom, but it's pretty much the same as the ones that you've seen in your green book. I think that the patent director was not on that first draft, so now it has been included. And it was based on a 2% COLA, and then there's obviously the collective bargaining agreements that are still up for negotiations, and they're all marked as in negotiations and when they expired, or when they expire.
The three unions that are in negotiation, we've got another article here to have funds aside to make those contracts whole when we come to agreement. But the compensation table doesn't currently include those three unions' updates beyond a 2% COLA, correct?
Actually, it just lists out what's in the current contract.
Right.
So any contract that has been settled, any non-union employees, they have a 2% COLA in there. For the ones that have not been settled or are in negotiations, there's a note there, and the wage represents what's in their current contract.
Okay.
We were saying the same thing, I just said it wrong.
I understood both of you, so that's okay.
So I make a suggestion that the Board of Selectmen and Finance going forward ask that the Finance Department outlines any changes in the contract over and beyond 2% that are in the contract that could change the financial responsibility to the town. Our Finance Department currently does a phenomenal job. The Methuen City Council approved a contract, much as we are saying, yes, it's only about 2%. And the details of the contract have the officers making 189% increases. And the federal government is now involved.
I saw that in the
So,
news, yeah.
I don't, you and who's in that office right now do a phenomenal job.
That raise not
You
too long
need
ago.
to We need to know of anything that is beyond 2%, any other financial liabilities. So if there are none, I trust your word in that, but if there aren't, I'd like to see them in writing before we vote.
Right, the whole picture, basically, right? So, Allison, would you do me a favor and just pull your mic down a little bit, just so, there you go.
So I think I'm a little confused, Allison, if you could just clarify. So you're talking about any changes that on a contract. Right now, I don't know what changes are going to be because they're still in negotiation, so I wouldn't be able to know what the financial impact is.
I agree. So what happened was the finance director came in front of its board and said, all that's being presented to you is a 2% increase. They didn't outline the other details contained in that contract that had huge financial impacts. If you have none or are unaware of any now that you're asking us to vote on, I'm fine with that. If, however, in parts of the negotiation that we've done in the past, and I know of, and then we took votes at 2%, but there was more behind the scenes, I would just like those called out.
Oh, yeah, there always are. So, like, you know, if there's longevity payments, if the longevity payments change,
Right.
clothing allowances could be part of it. Any
financial
stipends, so like DPW, they get the snow stipend or anything like that. So every time a contract goes up for negotiations, there's a possibility that those numbers will change. Do I know of what the financial implications are? I don't.
Once they're done,
Once they're
and you're
settled.
asking us to
Well, we
vote
can
on
vote
them,
to-
that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
But right now, yes, the table only includes the 2%.
Perfect.
But for those other contracts, as part of the number that Joe just mentioned, which is later on the warrant, on the warrant, I do have an estimate on some of those items, or what I think that they're going to be going up or down, or remain the same. But that's really just an estimate based on what I've seen in prior contracts. It's not that I have any information at all on those particular items.
Okay, perfect.
All right, any other discussion on the compensation classification table? Anybody want to, we know enough about it to say we support it? Anyone?
I'd like to see the final.
I'd like to see the final first, okay. That's totally fine. Okay. All right, then moving on to capital expenditures. See if town will raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds, money for the purpose of capital expenditures, etc.
Okay. So these are the items, the capital items that we are asking the town to fund through taxation. So on your packet, you should have the capital lists for fiscal year 20, which lists out all the items that are being presented at town meeting. And there's the funding sources.
There we go. Looks like this, everybody, if you're looking through.
Yeah. So on the bottom of that schedule, there's, looks like this.
Yep, I got it.
Everybody got it? Okay, go ahead.
So on the bottom, you'll see what the sources are. This $308,000 is general fund budget. It does say including free cash, but I haven't heard of any items being funded through free cash to date, so it would just be raised and appropriate. And the 30803 consists of the voting machines for the town clerk's office, the pickup truck for the fire department, the police SUV, the dump truck for the DPW, the road and sidewalk repair program. There's two pieces to that. We use a portion from our Chapter 90 funds, and then a portion is funded through the town. And then the building at the Patton Park for $50,000.
Session, bathroom.
Yes.
Yep.
So the total in Article 2-3 would read $308,003.
Yes. The remaining of the items that,
$308,003
yes.
from the general fund for those things that were just mentioned. Okay.
So there are other capital items, but they're going to be bonded, I'm sorry, and or going to be funded through CPA. So it's the interest cost is going to be part of the debt service budget, not necessarily segregated here.
Gotcha. Any questions?
Yes, on the town hall renovation, 700,000, is this the only time we vote on that number, or does it come up again later? I mean, once we say yes to 700, it just goes into a bucket, or that's not done incrementally?
700 would be authorizing us to raise up to $700,000, and that's actually going to get split between two different asks. One is $150,000 from CPA, which the CPA has agreed to put forward, and the other would be, the remaining $550 would be through bonding. You know, we wouldn't bond it until we had the need for it. The part of the reason to structure it this way is that if we get the CPA funds and we don't get the authorization to bond, we can at least continue along the design permitting aspects of the project until the special town meeting. The 150 won't carry us much beyond that, but we can get ourselves to a full question with all the bells and whistles in front of the special town meeting. If the town meeting so chooses and agrees to fund the whole thing, we can go forward all the way, and by the special town meeting, we'd have construction documents and everything else ready. So that is kind of where we're at.
We think the 700 gets spent in the fiscal year that we're voting on?
Yeah. I think there's a really good chance, the idea being that we'll be using this year, and Jeff, you're on the committee, you can speak to this, but the idea is that we're trying to use this year to get an actual proposal with public input and everything else put together. We'd know what it is that we're asking for. We'd know what would be proposed for the future of this building. And, you know, the $700,000 is an estimate based on, you know, roughly 10% of what we expect the total ask is. That's really how you get to that number most of the time. So.
And the $550,000 most likely would be a short-term ban, so we wouldn't bond it until we actually know what the total project is. It would just to get us the funding so that we could continue with the project.
So the 150 from CPA up front would probably almost definitely get spent this year. I mean, would definitely get spent this year. The other 550 would be subject to, you know, how fast this moves and whether we're able to, you know, get the ban done and keep moving the project forward. That's all subject to the town meetings, the will of the town meeting.
On the road and sidewalk repair for the 90,000, I remember a few years ago that was put in as part of the capital budget because there were some very specific sidewalks that needed work above and beyond just kind of general maintenance and repair of the sidewalks. And I'm wondering why that continues to remain in there, and are there specific projects in mind?
I know Tim has a specific plan for which sidewalks are being done, and I think it's part of an overall plan of, you know, proper sidewalk replacement. But I can have him come and speak to you all about that more in detail at the meeting on the 18th.
Okay.
Do you think, I hate to have him come out, do you think he could just send a list?
He could do that.
I mean, that'd be the easiest thing. I mean, I'm curious too, because I remember just before I got on the board, you were probably involved in it, Jeff, walking around some of the neighborhoods and looking and assessing kind of sidewalks a little bit and seeing what neighborhoods really needed it. And I remember there was kind of a plan for those certain neighborhoods to get a new sidewalk, and where are we at with that? I know we've been a lot of kind of hand in hand with the road paving from the water work.
Right.
And then they've done sidewalks on some of those streets as well. So I am curious myself as to where we are in that project. And
because we have a big need for downtown for Railroad Avenue sidewalks, big need.
Yeah.
So you know, if there's a way to get that included.
Okay.
So, sorry, so walk me through, so what is the actual ask for this Which number are we asking for?
For the capital expenditures?
308 or?
308 and...
So 308 to be funded out of the general fund.
Okay.
There's an additional, so when you're talking about the road and sidewalk repair program, there's a total of $190,000 planned for that. We're taking $100,000 out of our Chapter 90 allocation, and then taking $90,000 from the general fund to fund that. If you, you know, for instance, if you decided not to put forward the general fund ask of $90,000, then that's $90,000 less work that would get done to streets and sidewalks. That's really the way we'd probably move it. But that's for your consideration. The overall ask right now for general fund is $308,000, of which $90,000 is being directed towards the street and sidewalk program.
Okay.
And I will get you the list of streets.
So it's a minimal impact. I just did not filled in, but trying to do the math.
Yeah.
But per thousand.
And
do we think?
Marissa will have all these figured out by the time we go to the March 18th meeting, the tax impact of each of these
Right.
votes.
Right.
Correct?
What's it roughly? If we had to guess,
Do you know, Marissa, roughly?
Roughly 300,000.
what would it be per,
It's usually about 7 cents per 100,000.
we're talking
Give or take.
21 cents?
Yeah,
I'm happy to see tobacco roads on there.
yeah. So it could be a little confusing, but this schedule right here just shows all the capital asks that are being presented at town meeting, but there's different funding sources. So this article is just asking for the one that is the 300,000 that is coming from, you know, just raise and appropriate. When we get to the debt service request, it's going to include payments related to some of these asks. So it's just because of the funding sources, but these are the projects that are being presented.
Gotcha, that makes sense. Scott, did you have something you want to add?
Just that this was one of the articles I drafted a summary for. And I thought it was good to list this whole idea. We're trying to like show that even though there might be some operating expense, we might be bonding, we might be doing other things, we want to put everything in context. So even though people are only voting directly on the $308,000, there's really a $3 million capital budget that we have. So explain that to them, and that was the purpose of the summary that I drafted. And also let folks know we've got a new capital planning policy that's in place. We have new capital.
Want to read the summary?
Sure. I said new for FY20 is a capital planning policy created by the Board of Selectmen and using a state grant and recommended by DOR and reviewed by the FinCom. We also have a new capital committee to help the town and town manager understand and consider the relative need, timing, cost of capital expenditures and the effect capital expenditures may have on the financial condition of the town. I suggest adding something else starting next year, and on every year thereafter, the capital committee shall prepare a 5-year capital plan and propose an expenditure plan for the ensuing fiscal year. The report shall include concise summary of historic trends, the tax impact of capital expenditures and debt. And then I gave a little background, just taking stuff out of the other reports they already provided. Total debt of $10.7 million has been trending down since 2017 as we pay off bonds. The capital, I should insert the FY20 capital improvement plan includes vehicles, town hall renovation design phase, bathroom, storage concession buildings at Patton Park, and paving/water main at Tobacco Road. The capital improvements of $3.6 million is funded with $3.2 of bonding, $308K from the general fund, $100K from Chapter 90, and I also suggest we insert the $150 from CPA.
Yeah.
The next line was a misstatement of mine. That should be in the Article 2-4, one where it says the general fund doesn't include the school's debt expense.
Okay.
So I thought it'd be good to give everybody an example where we have a new policy, and we've got a new committee we formed as a chance to educate folks a little bit about what's going on.
I think that's good. I think it's a little long. It's a little long.
Yeah.
But it's stuff that we're really working on and that we're moving towards, so I think it's all relevant. I mean, if you can trim it a little bit, that'd be great, but I'm okay with
I erred in everything I did here
Yeah.
going long, because one of the criticisms we have is the warrant hasn't been
Right.
disclosed enough information. And the FinCom's going to be given their report on every item too, so I thought,
No, I think it's
not that
fine.
we should go long. If it's not relevant, we ought to hack whatever we want out of here, but that's why I wrote them the way I did.
Yeah, no, I think
I think
it's
it's good because we've changed things this year, so it's good to have a little more.
We're giving a little insight on
Yes.
what we're changing and why we're doing it, so I think that's good.
So first draft for anywhere, and I can clean up those other things and give it to you.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Any other comments on capital expenditures before we move on?
The only other thing I want to bring up is the Patton concession stand and bathrooms. I hate to see this be something that's added to our tax, or have it implicate our tax amount because we are so high. Don't we, it seems to me every year in the revolving fund, in the for the recreation department, it's about $250,000, that balance hasn't moved. Isn't that something that we might consider tapping into?
That revolving fund?
Right, so it's not hitting the taxpayer.
I gotta be, I want to ask Marissa and Donna to be sure.
I don't know if we can do that.
Revolving funds are specifically for costs associated with why the fees were charged in the first place.
Okay.
So the fees weren't charged to build a building on Patton Park, so
Right.
I think we might be astride state law if we try to use the funds for that. Am I right, Donna?
I'm gonna, before Donna says, I think that was my
Marissa's already
understanding of
shaking her
that
head,
fund.
yeah, so I think Marissa's already-
It's drawn from programming, so it has to go back to
into
programming,
programming.
unless Donna's gonna say something
Yeah, it's
different.
just not just the state law, it's also our bylaw. You'll recall a couple years ago, we had to adopt a bylaw that specified what our revolving fund proceeds could be used for. And it is defined as rec programs, to support rec programs.
We could apply to the CPA, though, correct, for this? I think it might fall into CPA, it may not.
Good.
For recreation?
Yeah,
For
under
recreation.
recreation
Yeah.
I think we
uses.
could.
Or is there a way in the recreation department budget to shuffle these monies around so that we could use some of the revolving fund monies for some of the programming that's already in the general fund budget, so that that money would be freed up to use?
I don't know if there is anything like that, so I
don't know.
defer to Marissa.
I don't think so.
Budget for rec is
I just hate
actually
to
pretty
see, I mean,
tight.
with fundraising and CPA, I'd love to have that done.
Well,
by all
I'm
means,
not,
but
this might be the only time you'll ever hear me say this, and Marissa's gonna stare daggers at me, but, you know, our whole purpose around free cash policies and everything else is that free cash gets used for one-time
right.
projects. We're taking a lot of our free cash already and putting it into stabilization funds and everything else in this year's warrant.
Right.
But this is a lower cost item. This is something you could consider taking 50,000 out of free cash for and not having it go into the general fund. But it just weakens our free cash position when you do that. That is something that's open to you. I'm not necessarily saying I want to see us do that. I'm just giving you what your options are.
And that's ultimately still taxpayer
Yes.
money, whether it comes out of.
It's already collected taxes,
But it's already collected
still,
taxes,
it's still tax money, right?
And these are for the second ones at Patton Park? Because we have brand-new state-of-the-art at the pool.
This is talking about the one on the ball fields on the driveway side.
So
That are in
have we looked at the need now that we have the pool with the brand-new bathrooms and a concession and a,
Still a pretty big need. I would say if you deleted those, there would be a problem down there. The pool isn't always accessible in the times that sports are going on. I know during flag and baseball and everything like that, people use that concession in the bathrooms like constantly.
I think we'd probably get a challenge from our building inspector anyway, just because there's a formula for the number of
ratio, right.
bathrooms you need versus
Okay.
the number of people using a given venue.
Okay.
So,
Fair
you know,
enough.
we're probably, even with the brand-new bathrooms at the pool, we're probably still under that
are we
ratio.
gonna move them?
I don't have the specifics on, my understanding was they were trying to, you know, reconstitute that building there, but for
Because-
50,000, I don't think that's a brand-new building.
Would you put it somewhere
located
else?
You might want to put them somewhere else or use the entrance somewhere else, but when I worked here, the big problem was you had a high number of vandalism for those, a
You want
huge
the-
number of
you want the entrance
vandalism.
Where it could be more seen publicly.
More seen publicly, and also you're asking the children to walk around behind when no one can see them
Right, that's a good point.
versus them, having them enter where their parents can still view who's going in and out of
I think
those
that's a good point.
restaurants.
That's a good point. I'll mention that to Sean, and if this goes forward, I'll make sure that.
And
they
if
look
you
at
spend the money, I would say you need to get a working camera, because the vandalism was huge
Sure.
down there.
do you think, to Jeff's point, I mean, thinking CPC and general fund, whether we do free cash?
I think we should be conservative with free cash, given all the other moves that we're doing. We've got stabilization funds that we're creating, and it's over $25,000, so it's a capital item.
Right, that's true.
It doesn't mean that that's the only way to fund capital items, but
that's
it is
the general way of doing it, right?
I don't know if it will help the efficiency of the meeting, but you don't need to decide the source of the funds at this meeting. All you need to do is approve the subject matter, which is all that the warrant does, and by leaving our language on the funding source as broad as we typically do, then you can decide sometime between the closing of the warrant and the date of town meeting as to what the specific fund will be.
Perfect, thank you, Donna. So with that being said, any other capital discussion?
Well, that makes it kind of tough because, just as an example, if I were opposed to spending taxpayer money on the concession stand, my vote tonight, I could vote in the positive for
Right,
this
depends on the
list.
funding revenue, or funding.
Right,
revenue.
and then,
Well, you can always abstain.
okay.
And I think the need isn't, yeah, there might be a concession stand there so people can raise money, but the problem is the bathrooms
Right.
and storage. That's what's
Right.
going on. It's been, like Allison said, there's
The
vandalism, they're
bathrooms
old,
Oh,
they're
no, I'm all
not.
for it, it's just
So
the funding
it's not,
source.
so it's not, the concession element is minor.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean to imply that no, I'm all for the project, it's just the source of the funds. And, all right.
All right, so anyone want to make a motion on this one?
I move that the Board of Selectmen recommend favorable action on Article 2-3.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Is that an abstention?
Opposed.
Opposed by Jeff.
Jeff, is it just the Patton Park issue? that you
And the
have, or-
Tobacco Road project, I don't think has been vetted enough. I think it's going to come up as a huge surprise to people. Personally, between now and then, is my opinion.
Okay.
Okay.
Article 2-4.
I'm sorry, Scott.
Go ahead, Sean.
Is tobacco not in that article, right?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, 'cause
It's in
bond-
the-
No,
further
it's-
down?
It's in a different,
It's in a different-
it's
it's in
on
a
our
different-
capital list, but it's a different,
Yeah, it's
It's on the same capital list, but it's in a different
confusing.
article on the
Correct.
warrant.
Because it's on the same list, but.
yeah.
It's part of the debt service estimate.
Right.
So the reason, just to give you a little background, the reason why I had asked Donna to put this as a separate article is because some of these projects, they don't always get completed within the fiscal year. And if these appropriations were part of our general fund budget, if they're not completed a year in, then I would need to either encumber them or, so I like to have a separate capital article, because what happens is if they're capital and these projects are not completed, I can roll them forward into the next year and we can expend the funds until the project is completed. We had this, like I can give you an example. For example, water meters replacement. I've been seeing the past few years, every year we ask for $15,000 for water meters replacement. Whether we use it or not, you know, we kept asking for it. At the end of the year, if we have $10,000 left from that ask, it would just close to the general fund.
Right.
I'm sorry, to the water enterprise fund in this particular example. If we have it as a separate article, I can just roll it and we don't need to include it again because we still have.
Carryover.
Yes. And that's the reason why I had asked Donna to separate these items.
Right, and
Makes
so then if
sense.
there is a difference, then you can just ask for the lesser amount if you need to.
Exactly.
Got the carryover.
Because if it's part of the budget, then it rolls, it closes at year end. But if it's a separate capital item, we know that if the project is not completed, we can just roll it and we don't have to close it and then go back to town meeting and ask for it again.
That makes sense to me.
Great idea.
So,
Great.
but I know it can cause a little confusion because there's
It's still-
a lot of projects and there's different funding sources.
So Jeff, your vote on that last article doesn't include anything on Tobacco Road, just so you know.
Well, it's on, I guess I'm confused, because on this list,
Right, that's
Tobacco
that's
Road paving.
showing what all the capital projects that
oh,
we're
it's
proposing
because
this
it's
year.
If you look at
only
the
the
fu-
300 grand.
You look at the
Only
right-hand
300,000,
column.
but only the 300 grand is contained in this article.
Got it.
Right, and
Look
if
the
you're looking
right-hand
at
column, Jeff,
the
and
funding
it says
sources.
Free
Got
cash / budgetary adds up to that 308,000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Do
I
you
got
want to
you.
amend your
Why
vote?
we need a capital
do you want to
committee
amend
to
your
help
vote?
the town manager explain where all the money's coming
Yeah.
from.
so yeah, got it.
Okay,
All right.
Just making sure you know.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so 2-4, general town departmental appropriations.
I'm not sure how detailed you want me to be on this one. I know we had our Saturday meeting. I can just go quickly over the items that have changed since that meeting.
I think that was the point. Last week,
Right.
Joe gave us a heads up that they were coming, gave us some of the handouts, and it was
gave you the
tonight to
handouts, yeah.
talk just about the changes.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
So you have a schedule that looks like this. It has all the different accounts, and it has different columns. It has fiscal year 19, revised budget 19, adjustments to department requests, and then the last one is the adjustments to FinCom town manager's budget, which really all are the adjustments that we'll be talking about. So the first adjustment is actually under the finance IT. You'll notice that we account 15135530018 MIS software services, we decreased that by 10,500, and this is actually a reduction to the upgrade of the Vision software. We did further research and we realized we can actually have a savings there of $10,000. On the other hand, you'll see that right below it there's an increase of $20,000, and that has to do with our new email server. So we're going through the migration now. The company that we used is going out of business by the end of the month. And I would say that we're probably going to pay more in a month than we used to pay for 12 months. So, yeah, we used to pay about $2,000, and I think we're going to pay about $20,000 now.
Now, that includes the cost of the email server, but also archiving and everything else with it to make sure that we can stay compliant with
Yeah.
having all those permanent records.
And this company did include the archiving, and that's probably why they're going out of business.
I was going to say that's probably why they're not doing
We're
it.
sort of kind of riffing on Jeff's theme of like other sources of money to put stuff around. We haven't tapped the FinCom reserve in a long time. That's $100,000 that gets funded every year. This company going out of business wasn't expected. So is that
We're going to be
A possible
requesting,
source.
yes.
That's gonna handle the migration and the cost for the remainder of this year for
This
the
year.
monthly charges. But that's only for unforeseen
This amount
expenses.
needs to be in
This needs to
FY20
be in the
budget.
FY20 budget
Okay.
for the
That's going to be
recurring
just the
monthly.
standard invoice that
Yeah.
we're going to need to pay.
The
in.
plan is for fiscal year 19 to request a reserve fund transfer, because you are correct, it was unexpected. So
The
we're,
FinCom's already got knowledge of that. We'll be presenting that this week at their Wednesday meeting.
Okay,
Um,
good.
And they've seemed receptive to getting the request.
Yeah, I was going to Scott's suggestion, I was going to say the same thing, to ask the FinCom reserve.
Yep, we are doing that.
all right. So the next change is actually in the police department, $68,058, and that's actually the inclusion of the SRO.
What page are you on? I'm sorry. Oh, actually, they don't have page
It
numbers.
is
Sorry, it's
That's
under
okay.
15210.
three
It's the police department.
pages in, kind of. Page 6,
Page 6.
kind of
About
around the
halfway
top
down.
like this, and the third page out.
Thank you.
Starts with,
Oh, I see it.
yeah.
No, actually, it was actually on page 5 and then it's
Yeah,
6
page
again.
5.
Sorry, my mistake. One more halfway down.
And we have the impact fee revenue identified?
Yeah, it's on.
Had it already just didn't have the SRO cost in the budget?
We, at the time, we didn't know exactly how much we were going to still get in fiscal year 19 versus fiscal year 20. DOR had suggested that we budgeted conservatively. What I have done is I have changed actually the revenues on the other side to increase them.
Okay.
Because my belief is that we're going to get another $20,000 in fiscal year 19, and then we're going to get $43,000 in fiscal year 20, and we already got $10,000. So what you'll see is the revenue is going to be on one side, and then the appropriation on the other side for the SRO for the salary piece. Yeah.
Thank you. And Donna, just FYI, you brought this up, but I had a call with the State Cannabis Commission about intercompany sales that are going on at Green Meadow Farm, because they're a commercial grower and they don't have any answer yet, but I'm expecting in the hundreds of pages of regulations they've issued. There's one that applies to this because we're not unique, so I'm asking them to dig through the regulations and get it to us. So hopefully get an answer soon. I also talked to Representative Hill about it, and he knows one of the people on the commission and will help expedite an answer too.
And just while we're on the SRO, before we move off of it, just somewhat relevant to the discussion, we at our joint meeting with the school committee and the FinComs from both towns, there was some talk about the IMA and MOU for the SRO with the schools, the intermunicipal agreement, the memorandum of understanding. Joe, myself, and Don have been working on it with Jeff Sands at the schools to iron out all the details. Hopefully we'll get that done in the next couple of weeks. Just for everybody's information, we're working on that.
Okay.
All right, anything else from 2-4, Marissa, that's worth a highlight there? Anything else in the highlight for the changes in that?
Yes, for not on the SRO, but there's other changes. The under inspectional services 15241, the Wyndham assessment actually came in a bit higher than what we had estimated for, so it's an additional $6,140.
The cost to us has increased?
That's our share?
Our share. Now, this has been a bit of a moving target. We originally had started out at requesting $109,000.
Yeah.
We had adjusted it down.
Another 10,000 down, yeah.
Down 10,000, and then we got a new update from Wenham at what went up from where we went down to. So it is overall still lower than we had initially projected by $4,000, but it is up from our meeting in late January there.
Okay.
I believe the original estimate the formula was based on prior year numbers as far as number of permits and the I know there's two pieces to the formula, the population and then the actual volume, permits volume. So when they got the information after January for the new fiscal year, the numbers have changed.
Are they still excluding Gordon College in their numbers?
Not on this, I don't believe it's on this one. We do exclude it for the pool one.
I think it's included as well in the inspectional services, and that's their largest places where they would do inspections.
Yeah, I think it's included there.
It's something I think we should look at in FY20 for the town. The agreement between both towns is not advantageous.
Okay. The next page we have under education. I did get the preliminary budget for the Essex North Shore Agricultural High School, and the estimate went down by $28,000. I think we have less students, so this is a preliminary budget, but I adjusted the budget for that change. The next change is in 15543, Veterans Benefits. It's actually an increase of about $1,800. I got the preliminary budget from the Veterans Agency, and I adjusted the budget for that change. The next change is in 15543, Veterans Benefits. It's actually an increase of about $1,800. I got the preliminary budget from the Veterans Agency, and I adjusted the budget for that change. The next change is in 15543, Veterans Benefits. It's actually an increase of about $1,800. I got the preliminary budget from the Veterans Agency, and I increase the benefits expense by $2,000 because we did pick up a new veteran a couple of weeks ago. And the next one, the big one, I would say, is the library. So I just recently got the assessment for the library, and it's actually up $4,700 than what we had originally estimated. And most of it has to do with 2 retirements. So there's 2 payouts as part of that number, and then obviously the health insurance impacts as well.
So when you say
Payouts on-
payout, sorry,
Yeah, maybe it's the same question.
is it a
Payouts on-
one-time?
Yeah, these are like accrued vacation or something, or?
Exactly, so,
Okay, so it's a one-time.
yes, the payouts are one time. The health insurance, what it is there's 2 employees that are moving into the retiree health insurance, and then we're hiring 2 new employees, so we're gonna have, you know, 4.
40,000 total.
40,000.
But
For
so it won't be
employees and health
40,000 a year,
insurance.
But the increase will be, there'll be some amount more next year for health insurance than was last year, but you won't, it shouldn't go up again.
Won't be 40,000, 41,000 almost.
Are we buying out?
It's the
sick time,
vacation,
too?
so any sick, any, depending on what their contract states,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes it's 25% of the first 150 days, or
Yeah.
whatever the contract states that their buyout is. And then any vacation that they've accumulated, that they get paid out for their vacation time. Normally, no payout on personal. It's usually just vacation and sick,
Are they on accrued like we are?
as far as I know.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. The next one is interest on temporary loans, 15722. That's just a decrease based on, it's actually the $700,000 that we were talking about for the town hall design. Originally, I had the $700,000 as being part of the general fund. Later on, I found out that they had applied for the $150,000 from the CPA, so that's just a change from going from a $700,000 to a $550,000
That service
band.
goes down- That service goes down by $5,200
Yeah.
for that.
All right.
Oh, I see it now.
Next one is health insurance, 15914. And you might be surprised to see that number actually went up from the original estimate. Since our rates actually, we did get a good rate. But we have a few retirements and we have a few new positions. So that's really what that adjustment is for. We have 2 retirements that currently are not in the town's health insurance. So normally when we budget, we assume that the person coming in is going to be taking health insurance.
We have to budget for it, so.
I'm sorry, yeah, we have to
budget for it.
budget
so
for it.
with the retirements, we have to budget that we're gonna pick up 2 new employees that will take health benefits, and so that's what that increase is for. If we hire somebody that doesn't take health insurance, we won't spend that money at all.
And do you base it on a family plan or individual plan? Your estimate?
It depends on the position, but most of the times we'll go with a family plan to be on the safe side. Sometimes we also have, we've been looking at the details because we have people that we know are going to be transferring from a family to an individual. So we account for that as well. So it depends.
Depends on the
Yeah, it depends on the position and the circumstances. I know
Probably
that
the age of the
for
person, et cetera, et cetera. Okay.
Do we ensure our retirees are participating in Medicaid and Medicare? I know that can really, some towns have looked at it and they make that part of the retirement and then they find it really does affect what they pay out in health insurance.
Say that again? Yeah, we do have retirees on Medicare, yes.
It's not quite my question,
But
but
yeah,
it's okay.
that's what-
I'll call you tomorrow and we can talk about it. But it's to make sure that all of our retirees
Mm-hmm.
are taking, participating in plans also offered by
offset, yeah.
the government to offset. I mean, we wouldn't take anything away from them, but then it shifts some of the costs.
To those other plans?
Yes.
Yeah. I'd have to check on that.
Okay.
Okay, small one under Medicare. This has to do with the SRO increase. The next one is the transfer to the special revenue. This is actually the transfer for the Patton homestead.
So 159.95, is that what you're looking, or am I in the wrong spot?
15992.
Yep.
Yep. So that decreased by 15,148 to 86,343. And that is mostly due to actually health insurance. So we have the new patent director. The patent director took individual versus family, so that has changed. You know, when like life insurances, things like that. So all of those costs have been adjusted to reflect the actual cost.
Okay, it's part of what we budgeted up above.
Right.
Employees.
Yeah.
And the last adjustment is under 15996, transfers to trust funds. So this number actually includes multiple numbers. It includes the transfer to the OPEB trust fund for $125,000. It also includes the transfer to the capital stabilization fund for $579,122, and the transfer to the general stabilization fund for $322,654. And every time the budget changes, that number is going to change because it's based on percentages.
Percentage, right.
So, because of the way we adopted the policy, as a
Right.
percentage of the overall budget, every time the budget changes, the
That number
percentage
changes, right.
And I wish we hadn't done that. I know, I was here for that. I didn't realize that every little number changes a lot.
So that's one of those that's.
Yeah. It's one of those that, you know, every time it changes, that number is going to change.
We'll know what that number is going to be once the budget gets adopted.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
So those were the changes that have been done since our last meeting.
Thank you very much for going over all
you.
that. Any other questions or discussion on this one? Okay. More questions? Anybody want to make a motion? Are we ready for a motion on it?
This is the total budget proposal,
33,197,212.
33.2 million,
Yes.
Including the school.
Including the school.
We voted on that separately, though.
Can we vote on it later when all the numbers
Yeah, I
are
was
filled
going to
in?
say, as I'm thinking about it, let's,
I don't think we have to make any votes tonight.
no.
I have the numbers. The town is 12,465,331, and the school is 19,148,464.
One thing I recommend though, is, my summaries were kind of hosed up here, but remember there's a capital item for the schools. Just like we're having a capital item, we're asking the district to have a capital item.
Right.
It's confusing a little bit because they actually don't have any capital items.
Right, we're splitting it.
Which is confusing to us too, because we've had several years of urgent requests for capital items and then nothing.
Right, and then nothing.
However, they do have a debt expense of close to $400,000. And there's a huge change in debt expense from last year of.
The middle school rolls off.
Many years of over $2 million. So there's a huge change that's going on. So irrespective of all that, I think it's an opportunity to use the school's debt expense warrant article, or capital article that I'm suggesting we have every year, as a mechanism to talk about what's going on with capital. What's going on with capital happens to be this $398,000 of debt expense. Mm-hmm. So what I would suggest, we would modify the school budget under Article 2-4 by Hamilton's share of the debt expense.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets voted in Article 2-5, the school district capital expenditure.
Right.
So that it's more associated with its debt related to large-scale capital items.
Mm-hmm.
because that's the clear item that's in their budget this year. So it might feel a little strange moving
Right.
things around, but it also shows the focus on we're going to be expecting capital plans just like we're doing them, and this capital committee is supposed to be working with the district.
Yeah.
So that's that. So I kind of, with Allison, is saying maybe we shouldn't vote on this one yet because the numbers aren't all filled in here. What I think we should take out of the school district budget is the Hamilton share of their the debt service, which is whatever our current air rate is times $398,372. So we would reduce this overall budget by 60+% of that.
Right. Thoughts?
Have we discussed it with the school committee? Because I agree with what you're saying, Scott, and I think it makes sense that they have a capital and a operating warrant article, but in some ways too, I feel like we're overstepping. So I didn't know if we've had a discussion with them. And they've said we've overstepped, so.
So it was a topic at the meeting, the joint meeting. I also stopped in to see Dr. Harvey last week and told him about this, and he was kind of wishes he had a capital plan. A little frustrated, maybe even. But he's like, well, what would we talk about? I said the point is to start getting in the habit every year, just like our town doesn't have a 5-year plan that we're sharing either this year. Right. I said it's kind of like what we started doing when we educated the town on OPEB. We educated folks, and the next year we made the ask.
Right.
So it's an opportunity to get the muscle memory going about all this, and for them to say what's happened, why the budget has changed significantly for their debt and large-scale capital items, and why some of the changes have happened over the last few years, which are questions that FinCom's been putting to them, just like we have. So I think anything we do, Allison, is going to feel like we're overstepping on them. But if we're going to permanently try to have this kind of planning going on, both the town doing it and the district doing it, I think this is the easiest way to do it, at least this year.
But if debt service is already spent, so what happens if this didn't, if you're going to vote on it to pass, doesn't pass, it's not, you can't just spend the money, now you have to go find it somewhere.
That's right, that is what would happen.
Right. So that's the only weird thing about it, is it's already spent money, it's not.
Well, it's not already spent, they're asking for approval for the debt expense bonds that are already
spent.
Are in, so there's obligations that we have.
So it's obligations, but
Right.
not new projects.
That's why I think it's the time to educate the voters in that my opinion, we would say yes on this our share of the $400 debt expense, because overall, I think we're probably leaning that way anyway. And it's then the opportunity for the district to explain to the townspeople what's going on with capital. And there's been a lot of discussion about merging of schools or consolidation of grammar schools and what's going on in MSBA and the timing to develop new schools. This becomes the mechanism to do it at a time when it's not yet contentious.
Right.
I'd rather give them the opportunity to speak to it than put a dollar amount to it, that we've already sort of voted that debt service in our previous votes to spend the money to do this, to do the stuff. So now we're voting again to not fund it. I understand the premise of it, but I don't know that the money.
The reason why I think it's important to put money,
Okay.
because it forces the discussion. And I find it highly unlikely that the school budget wouldn't be approved, personally.
Yeah.
From what we know, and look at all the rest of what's happening in the rest of the warrant, there's no, the warrant hearings, the hearings that the school committee has had, the initial indications of our FinCom, even though I haven't finally reviewed everything, our joint meetings with them, there's no indication of changes or lack of support.
Right.
But there's a ton of contention.
Are you suggesting that the town, are we going to treat the debt payments the same way in that separate warrant article for the town?
In the one for the capital expenditures, 2.5, we'd be voting on the debt service for previous capital expenditures.
So we're not going to do?
No, because we are explaining our capital
We already
budget
are. Yeah.
in with the general fund request, and the way I added on, oh, it's really, we're bonding other things, and there's other projects. So we are using this mechanism to explain all the projects and what our funding mechanisms are.
Yeah.
And that vehicle doesn't exist for the district budget.
I mean, I appreciate the premise, but I think I would, to keep things simple, I would treat the school and ourselves the same way with this whole capital project issue. I think it's a great issue. I think it's a great issue to educate them. I think it's pretty simple to say the school just doesn't have any right now. The town does. The town has $300,000 worth of capital out of the general fund. I just think it confuses it by taking the debt payment out for them, but not for us.
Is there another mechanism to get our point across?
I think just, there's zero, I think but it's 3 minutes to explain why it's there. Like the way you've already put it into a narrative, Scott, which I thought read well.
Yeah, I mean, there is benefit to having that on there with, even if it's zero. You know, hey, this is the annual article we expect to see school capital expenses in. The school didn't have any this year.
Right.
I'd like to include it in there, just not sure the mechanism is a little wonky because they don't have anything. But I do think.
Well, maybe a zero number would highlight that even more.
Right.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
I like the zero better, shows that they haven't been proactive, so maybe,
I was just gonna say that, Scott.
Yeah.
Maybe we put zero in there, because I think we need to get the ball rolling on that we're expecting a capital plan, right? I mean, and I think if we don't put anything in there, and we do kind of, as we've been doing it, there's no pressure,
I heard
right?
there's 7 people running for a school committee, is that true?
8, I think.
7 or 8. Ronnie,
I mean,
those-
it'll get the conversation going.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, so I
I'd be
mean,
willing
that's,
to, if everyone's doing it, to do kind of what Scott's saying, but put zero in there.
Yeah.
And make that statement, hey, we've asked, and we don't have any capital plan yet. We're hoping to get one and work with them and forming a capital plan so that we can all look at it, Hamilton, Wenham, and the school together.
sure.
Would everybody think that's,
I mean, Wenham is going to be voting an override,
yeah,
so their reasons are different,
right.
right? They don't have, they're exceeding their
They've
levy
got their-
limit, so they're
yeah, they're
picking,
both
and
levy.
what their amount is, it's not up to us, that's their issue.
Right.
We have not,
Right, it's a different situation from
Right.
last year.
so,
If you're
yeah.
trying to be consistent, I would say it should be comp classification table for both, one for the town, one for the schools. Capital expenditures, one for the town, one for the schools. General town department appropriations, and then the school appropriations. If that's what we're going for, which I don't disagree with, then let's lay them all out the same.
They get funded in different warrant articles. So I think.
It would just be
maybe-
breaking them up more, though, not, it wouldn't be combining
So
them.
I think your point is right. The whole idea is, I would imagine if you ask the average person at a town meeting about fund accounting and where the money comes from, whether it's capital, and it's capital, but if some of it comes from operating, and some of it's debt expense, it's also in the operating stuff that's funded all the stuff, everybody's eyeballs are rolling in their heads. So we don't have that annual report yet from the capital committee to help explain what is all the capital that we have and what are the needs that we want going forward and how those things are being funded. So instead of muddying all that this year, maybe Jeff's point is the best, of just saying, just put it in as zero
Yeah.
and leave it at that.
Yeah, this is how we're gonna start reporting it. We have a zero.
Right.
It is what it is.
And if that's okay, I mean, it's easy enough to vote for that. But also, I would suggest that maybe I follow up with Dr. Harvey, so he knows what's going
Yeah.
on behind here.
Yeah,
Because he
no,
goes,
I
what do
think
we
that would be
vote? What? There's nothing there. And I was
Right.
like, yeah, that's
That's the point.
what we're trying to highlight. All right, so
So 0%.
Make a motion we vote in favorable action for 0% capital expenditures.
Kind of facetious, but anybody want to second that motion?
second.
All those in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Did we cover everything there? Okay.
Water enterprise?
We're gonna move on to,
No. Abstain.
all right, so we've covered 2-5, okay, 2-6 water enterprise budget. And we've got a request for, how much is it again, Marissa?
So it's a 1,844,184. So it's the sheet that you have, the water enterprise summary.
There it is.
I love the version and the date on the bottom, thank you.
All right, and this is just continuing on with our,
So since the last version that you have received, there's been a couple of changes. The debt service number has decreased because we actually pulled the water main project out of capital. So that decreased the debt service number. The indirect costs number have changed because every time the general fund budget changes, then the allocations and the calculations for the indirect costs change as well. So that number has changed. And the use of retained earnings has changed. It's now 177,684. That's what we're requesting to be used from retained earnings in order to balance the budget. And our user charges have changed as well. I actually decreased that number based on what we billed for the third quarter. I don't feel like that our consumption is down, so I don't feel like we will be able to get what we actually have budget for fiscal year 19. So I decreased the budget for 20.
Was
So
the usage down, do you think, because we had the water ban on for so long?
that's what I thought. But so I would have expected to see a little jump there, and I'm not seeing it. And then when you look at the fiscal year 18 actuals, it was only $1,619,000, which obviously we didn't have that number when we budgeted for 19.
Right.
So, but if I look at what the actual for 18 was and what we have built to date,
Yeah,
I don't see us reaching that target.
got it.
So I made an adjustment to that number and then balance it out with the retained earnings.
And how much is there in the retained earnings total?
Right now, I think there's about $1,900,000 to $1 million in retained earnings.
Okay.
Obviously, it depends on how we're going to end up this fiscal year 19.
Yeah, but roughly.
But roughly,
The
yeah.
last line.
I'm sorry?
The last line, is that it?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, right.
So our water efficiency is making our water more expensive, is what I heard.
Right, because the only way you raise money for the water enterprise fund is through billing for water, so when you
Nothing really goes down.
don't sell
Cost doesn't
water,
go down
then the
'cause
revenue goes down, but the costs stay the same.
Costs the
so-
same because we have the same
Right.
facility we have to operate,
right.
and the same people we gotta pay.
Yep.
Interesting.
What is use of funds personal charges? Halfway down, right under total source.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's
Top there,
payroll.
377.
So it should be personnel?
Yeah.
I thought so.
That's a good catch, Allison.
Yes.
And did we budget anything thinking we may have to spend more capital to bring our aging water hydrants up to date? It doesn't seem like anything went up to address that need.
Not that I know of.
We
I don't know.
are working on that within the boundaries of the water distribution budget that Tim has. I can have Tim come in. Tim has been working on a plan to start replacing fire hydrants rather, and we'll be bringing that into you. But Tim has another source, not in the annual operating budget, to pay for that from. So I'll have him come in and explain that.
Okay.
We had a conversation a few months ago about be changing this meter fees per meter than per property.
Yeah, we talked about changing meter fees per units, but that hasn't been back on another agenda, but this specifically had to do with our hydrants are aging and past their life expectancy, so we have to replace them.
We should talk about that at a future meeting. Changing that. Small incremental, but it adds up to what I think we said, it's $80,000 or something like that over the course of the year.
He said some of his hydrants would be $15,000 each.
So, but the money we could raise by charging.
Yeah, you could raise $80,000 just changing the cost per unit.
Okay. Any other questions on water enterprise?
No.
Okay.
So the summary is, not, do we really need
The total?
no, sorry, we're gonna write like brief summaries
Oh,
for
sorry.
things, but who is writing this one, and is it, right now, it's just sort of a one-liner? Is that enough?
Do you think we need a summary for this one?
I think we just copy what we did last year and what has the
You have it
effect
right
it
there.
has.
Yeah, I think just the tax rate and whatever the increase is and fiscal impact.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I may, I would suggest maybe adding something to the effect that we are using retained earnings to balance the budget. And, we can do that, but if we continue to use the retained earnings, eventually those funds will not be there.
Similar to the free cash conversation we have in the general fund side, the retained earnings in the water enterprise fund is much like the free cash, but for that budget. So when you use retained earnings to balance annual expenses that are occurring, then you eventually run out of retained earnings. So,
Well, I remember the last time we increased water rates, it was the first time in quite a while, and part of the reasoning in determining the new water rate was so that we wouldn't have to change the water rates as often, like every year, 2, 3 years, and that we would build up this reserve. Like it was an intentional.
now we're using the reserve, so,
As
I mean,
part of
I think,
operating
yeah,
is-
what I've been told, and I wasn't here, but what I was told was that the last time you raised the rates, the conversation revolved around trying to hold the rates for the next 5 years. This year will be the 5th year in that, and Marissa has worked really hard to make sure we're able to maintain that pledge. But we'll probably have to be talking about water rates by the time we get to the FY21 budget.
Right, and you remember a handful of meetings ago, we had the hearing on the rates?
Yes, yeah.
And then we had discussed at that point in time to do a yearly rate check, and to Joe's point there, we had said we'd kind of put a stall on it for that first handful of years, and then probably next year we're looking at a rate increase, or next year after.
And we wouldn't be proposing a rate increase that would, immediately get you back to having more retained earnings. It would be to balance the budget so that the retained earnings could stay there. The idea, again, for those is to, be able to have them for use in an emergency situation, use for unforeseen expenses, not for use
Right.
to, to help you pay the ban on if you have to go out and borrow money, but not to actually run the system.
So I think those are excellent points. Can you and/or Joe write something in the summary to say, it's been so long since our rate increase, we're now seeing we have to hit our free cash, so to speak. We probably will be needing to discuss next year or in the future a rate increase. I think you should just start the dialogue, so put that in
I
the
think that's good.
summary.
I'll work on it with.
Do we feel confident enough to make a vote on the water enterprise?
Again, I just want all the number, I'd like everything filled in before I vote on anything.
That's fine. I'm just asking, just so we can tick some
Yeah.
off. All right, so 2-7, annual financial actions. So we have a handful of those.
Can I hold for a sec, because I respect what Allison's saying, is like, he wants to see the number voted in the draft before we vote on it, but I was looking for the calendar, and when the FinCom,
It's like the day after our meeting. Right.
this week, though.
Yeah, they're meeting this week. You had agreed to give the FinCom as much of a draft of the warrant as possible with summary so that they could start working on making their votes and having their meetings they need to have to make their recommendations. So, you know.
That's why I'm kind of asking everyone if we can give them as much guidance as we can. That would be beneficial.
Well, and likewise, some of these, we're looking for their guidance on, you know?
Yeah, I think
I
they're
am.
supposed to propose it first to us, and then we vote on what they've proposed to us, but.
But I don't think we need their input on the water enterprise budget. Or, I mean, it's always good to get whatever they want to say, but otherwise we're back and forth. They're going, well, what are you guys voting? And then they're
We've
supposed to
been there
write
before.
whatever their opinion is about what's being, we're the ones presenting the warrant to the town meeting. They're the ones advising town meeting about whether we made good recommendations or
Right.
not.
Yeah, but anything financial, I appreciate their input on. Financial especially. I mean, they're advisors for the whole meeting, for all the warrant articles, but financially especially, I think it'd be good to hear what they have to say.
But
mean,
the
it's not
warrant's
a
supposed to be
huge
published
deal.
next week, right?
2 weeks.
2 weeks? So
But you don't
if
meet
we're,
together.
but we're not meeting, and then they need to meet to review all this stuff. We're
Then we need to meet more often, or we need to put these things on the agenda sooner.
Yeah.
But I think we're derelict, honestly, to vote things with blank dollar amounts.
We can write the dollar amounts in tonight. and
Well,
vote on
that's-
dollar
We have it
amounts.
right in front of us.
We have the
just
dollar
like we
amount.
decided on the school district,
Yeah.
put in 0. We could put in the
Put in the number. yeah.
water enterprise amount.
1,844,184.
Right. And
I
then
don't think, I think we write it in and vote.
Numbers there.
We'll fix the summary.
So what is the number we should have there?
1,844,184.
Exactly, 1 million.
What other numbers should be on there? Percentage?
Yeah. The FY20 operating budget for water department represents a,
Well, it's not part of the general fund, so that wouldn't apply.
It will not impact the tax rate, and current water rates will not be impacted.
right.
So it has no effect on the tax rate. It has no effect on the current water rate. We know the number is $1,844,184. And that is the expected request.
Yeah, that's what I've written in here, so.
There's 2 key points, right? One is we're increasing use of retained earnings. It's not good.
Right.
And the other is, we're at the end of the 5-year commitment to hold the water rates. So even though it says right now there's no increase in the water rates, we've got to telegraph to people.
That there will be.
All we're telling them is, the end of the current 5-year thing is over,
Right.
and our cushion of savings is depleting,
Is depleting, right.
which we should tell them.
Yeah, I would be fine on voting on this one with the included summary to what Allison was saying, and I think what we have all agreed with is that we state that using the retained earnings to balance the budget is not sustainable. And that we review the water rates yearly. We had a 5-year hold on the water rates as per agreed when we did up the rate, and we will be reviewing it next year, and there is a possibility it will go up to that we're not kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul here.
So the amount in here is 1,844,184?
Yep.
184?
Correct.
I recommend, or move that the selectmen recommend favorable action on Article 2-6.
Anyone second?
Second?
Bill second? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
One abstention, Allison. All right, 2-7, annual financial actions. A couple of transfers, or I should say 3 transfers. And this is a normal annual occurrence as part of the process, so. Marissa, any comments?
Can I just ask, did we just vote to include the water enterprise budget as presented? The 1.8?
Yes.
So it currently states personal charges?
Well, we're voting on the article. This,
That's for the article. Just clarifying.
No, we voted that we recommended favorably. We didn't vote on the language of the
Right.
warrant article.
you don't vote on this.
I move an amendment that we change 3 letters on the row that says personal charges to personnel charges.
In the summary, right? That's what you're talking about?
In the actual water enterprise summary, that's right.
All right, moving ahead again. 2-7, annual financial actions. We've got a transfer from a cemetery sale, a transfer from Clark Property Fund, the Conservation Fund, and a transfer from the Water Enterprise Fund to the General Fund for indirect expenses.
There's really not a lot to be said there. As you just mentioned, this is an annual article that we have on the warrant. There's a transfer from the cemetery lots and graves fund to the cemetery of $2,000. I don't have the number on the Clark Property Fund to the Conservation Fund. Normally that represents 12 months of interest in the account. So I just need to get the statement from February in order to get that number in there.
No, just sorry to interrupt. Do you know what kind of a number it is? Is it?
It's usually about $1,300. I think last year was $1,350. So something around that, maybe for $1,400, but
Okay.
usually represents 12 months of interest. And the last one represents the Water Enterprise Fund indirect costs transfer to the general fund, which is $419,630.
What are like examples of indirect funds?
Of the indirect costs?
Yeah.
So there's a full, I think actually in the green budget book that you have, it's actually included in there, the full calculation, but it has to do with health insurance costs. So all the water employees, they get paid out of the water fund, but their health insurance costs get paid in the general fund.
Yeah.
Our life insurance, there's property and casualty insurance, there's the workers' comp insurance. All of those costs, insurance-related costs, are paid in the general fund, but we then allocate to the water.
Perfect.
There's also an allocation of the DPW director's time.
Good.
There's also an allocation of the finance, the treasurer's office, and the town manager's time that is spent related to water operations.
Perfect.
So it's a pretty long calculation, but I did include it in the book if you want to see, but that's really the highlight of how it gets calculated.
That's important because otherwise those would be a burden of the taxpayer, which it shouldn't be. It clearly is a responsibility of the water rate user or water.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Absolutely. And that's really all I have to say on that article.
All right. Any other comments? All right. Anybody comfortable making a motion to say favorable action, or we want to wait on it? I mean, we're talking $2,000 expected request for B there, $1,300 to $1,400, and the third number, the sum of money we know is $419,630.
So could I say that if you wanted to, just to have some more definition to item B, you could vote that the sum of money would be equal to 12 months' interest in that Clark Property Fund, and that will give you the actual number at the next meeting. So you'll have an actual dollar figure there, but you could make the vote contingent on it being equal to 12 months of interest in that fund, which is the practice.
Yeah.
I move the Board of Selectmen vote favorably on Article 2019-42-7.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
Allison abstains. right. Article 2-8, community preservation budget. Allison had a summary for this. There's there 3 asks, Allison? There's the community house, and they're
Town hall.
escaping me now. Town hall,
Hall.
and we've got debt service, 2 debt services, Sagamore Hill, Donovan Field,
And the regular CPA.
and the regular CPL administration.
Yeah, recently. That was what CPA gave to FinCom.
All right, perfect.
There's yeah, that's right.
Any comments on it, Allison?
No, I had asked Dora to fill in the dollars for, just so it would read exactly the same as the summary did last year for the residents. It's interesting to note that the CPA did vote in favor of funding $200,000 to the community house, and Wenham CPA voted to approve $50,000 towards the same project for the community house. But it's nothing unusual from anything in the past, and gotta get the numbers to fill it in, so the summary is identical to last year.
Pretty strong support across the members of the CPC for all the items?
I think they're all unanimous, is that correct?
They were.
Oh, unanimous.
And I'm just looking at, this is your summary right here, Allison?
Yeah.
Okay.
The one I emailed earlier.
Yeah, I didn't get it earlier, I'm just the first time I'm seeing it.
Unfortunately, I emailed it like 4 times, and it kept not going through, so then I finally sent it just to Joe and not everybody else. I think it's just email flukes that are happening with
Yeah.
the conversion. The CPC also asked if they could maybe meet with the Wenham CPC to have some general discussions, because we fund the same projects, to see if we can't get an alignment on how to fund them.
I just see a typo in your summary, but it's not too big of a deal, in FY9.
It says FYI 9, so it's actually
FY
space. It should probably be FY 19.
right.
It's probably a space issue. But.
Yeah. Do you think it's worth mentioning anything on that we've received 19% from the state the last couple of years for our match?
That the drop continues to draw, the continues to draw?
Yeah, I know there's some, Governor Baker's trying to get some traction with the Registry of Deeds to change the fees, I think, but I think it flopped last year, but I think he's trying it again this year. Because they realize it's not or find some other funding that is more
I think
sustainable.
as more and more communities join
Right,
on, it just.
More hands in the
that's
cookie
just
jar, per se,
reality,
right?
yeah.
All right. I'll read the the projects here so everyone knows the numbers here. So we've got open space and recreation project, which is $41,200, which is debt service for the Donovan Field acquisition. Another open space and recreation project, $112,300. Which is $67,000 from the Community Preservation Fund balance and $47,000 from the fiscal year 20 Community Preservation revenues. To fund the debt service for Sagamore Hill Conservation Project. Historic Preservation Project is a community, excuse me, sorry, the OPM for Town Hall, restoration renovation at Town Hall, which is $150,000 ask. Historic Preservation Project for $197,000. For the renovation of the community house, which is a kind of a laundry list of different things they're trying to do there. And they're also doing a capital campaign to make up the difference. Community housing reserve, to reserve $47,000 of fiscal year 20 CPA funds to the community housing reserve. And then the admin expense, which I think is, there's 5% or something like that from these. There's a matrix there, but there's a limit on it. But anyways, the number is appropriate, 23,500 of the CPA fund revenues, and that's administration. So that's our coordinator for the CPA door fox, plus signage, advertisements, et cetera, and administrative fees. So we have 6 things total.
I'm not involved with community house stuff, and I apologize for asking, but how does that work? Is that town property that sits on?
No, they're a private thing, similar to the, I guess, the Legion. We've given money for them to restore, renovate different parts of the Legion. Community houses come before the CPC
A number of times.
a number of times, probably at least, I would say at least 4 times. We had a talk with them before Allison got on the board when I was still on it, because they were coming to us every year for an ask. And we asked them to put together a capital plan and kind of do bigger asks to us and help do some capital fundraising on their part before they came back to us. So they put together a capital plan and kind of came back to us with a bigger ask. And I think it includes boiler, some roof stuff. There's a whole laundry list of things that they're trying to do. And I think, I can't remember the ratio, maybe Allison, you can remember from the meetings, the ratio of their capital plan compared to what we'll be granting them if it passes at town hall.
So their total ask, I believe, is $297,000.
Right, some from,
$97,000 went to Wenham. Wenham
Right.
said, no, they'll fund 50. So they asked Hamilton for 197, and Hamilton said, yes, we'll fund the whole
And how
197,000.
much are they raising on their own?
They have no idea.
They're getting ready to kick off the capital campaign themselves, and supposedly they're a much larger project.
I feel like it should be in unison. It's kind of a, like you said, it should be a comprehensive plan, not just, but that's my opinion.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons Jay Butler is saying that we need a capital plan, so that we all work together, and we work with the CPC and we work with Wenham, so that we're looking at this more globally and understanding that CPC is really running out of funds when it's paying its debt service for any other projects.
right.
So while the community house is a wonderful, phenomenal institution within the town, that's $200,000 that we can't spend on municipal buildings. And our municipal buildings are not in great shape. So we should be meeting more often in unison to try and all get on the same page.
Allison, I'm looking at this, the draft Community Preservation Committee budget here. On number 1 and number 2, can we put the year, I know the Donovan Field, I think, rolls off this year, and the Sagamore is a number of years, but can we put that number in there?
Yeah, can you put in the number?
So we, just so
I
that,
just looked at the summary. I wasn't looking at that overall. I didn't know it was.
yeah, either in the summary, but I think I'd probably put it right next to here, say that will roll off next year for the Donovan Field, and the Sagamore will roll off. It's another 15 years or so, I think.
Sagamore's in there for a while.
Yes, I think it was a 20-year bond.
20, was
so-
that what it was?
So it's only been a couple of years.
Yeah, and maybe even on that, I don't know if it's even worth saying, like, you could say the Donovan one's ending this year, but we could say we've paid, 2 of 20 payments out of the debt service for the Sagamore Hill. All right, any other questions on CPC?
No, I would agree with Bill. It'd be hard for me to support the community house ask without them having their own funds matching. And knowing that we have the town hall, just the town hall alone, and then a nice-to-have thing would be a turf field. We don't have enough money to do everything.
Did they, Allison, at the CPC meetings, since we're talking about, was it if they didn't do the capital fundraising, would they still be able to use the money that we gave them for?
Yes, it's not conditional.
Not contingent on it?
It's not contingent on their capital. And I agree with you, Jeff, as far as the turf versus this, but CPA funds go into different buckets, and we have to
Sure.
spend it from those certain buckets. So while I think it is true to compare it to the Hamilton Town Hall, that's probably going to cost the residents $6 million in the end of the day. The turf field is in a totally different bucket.
Right?
Yeah, right.
But the community
Good point.
house and the town hall are competing for the
Same money.
same very limited funds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I must say, I'm actually glad you brought that up. That has been one of my concerns that I've been talking to multiple people about is we don't have a lot of CPA funds available. And looking at the projects that are going forward, the town meeting will probably just use it all in these projects.
We've got
So
about
if-
580 or something like that.
Around that, yeah.
Yeah,
Depending on how we end the year.
right. Right,
So
'cause if this all goes through, we're
if this
cutting
all
it
goes through,
more, right. We're
More.
at 400,000
I mean,
plus, yeah. We've zeroed out almost.
pretty much,
There's about $471,000 in requests there.
Yeah.
If my math's right.
yeah. So if the intent is to ask for funding from for the town hall project, I don't know if it'll be there.
It
Right.
probably won't be there.
No.
That's my.
Probably won't be, because we're getting
If you
the,
fund this 200,000, it won't be there.
can I ask you another question, Allison? So at the meetings I can remember going to for CPC, that there was kind of talk as the more hands in the cookie jar, and how do we prioritize projects from the CPC? And the kind of way the CPC has worked is it's, if you apply, you get an eligibility hearing. And if
Yep.
it's deemed eligible, then you get a second kind of comeback, and you have a financial kind of a ask and review with the CPC. But very rarely does anything get denied from CPC, because if it fits the category and you've dotted your T's and crossed your I's, the CPC has fell up into this point that it will go to the town meeting. There was talk of trying to prioritize and even maybe deny projects looking at future ask. Was there any more of that talk during all these meetings with the kind of what we have
So they
left?
rated some, I think, as far as priority between themselves, and
Yep.
they understand the issues, but I think without more direction or interaction with this board on priorities, they're basing their decisions based on their best judgment.
Right, and it's kind of tough to decide, since it's a granting authority that's somewhat separate, what's eligible and what's not eligible. If your criteria says, if you meet this, you're eligible, right, then it's up to town meeting to prioritize.
Hard idea.
So,
I would also say in the past, we actually approved projects that the CPA in Boston have stated are not eligible. And when I joined the CPC, I said we could no longer fund those.
Are any of those what's recommended here?
They've come, this is in years past before
not
I was
these-
on
not these three.
CPC.
but none of these.
None of these.
Okay.
No. I would be mentioning it, I'm sure you know.
All right, so let's vote on this. So,
All right, so, 2-8, community preservation budget. Does anybody feel comfortable making a vote on it at this point?
I can vote on it.
you can vote on it.
I'll vote to put the CPC budget forward. I do think that the CPC should talk about it, but I also think someone might want to go forward and say that, just like in a household, you have all these asks and limited amount of money.
Right, yeah, that, I mean,
So-
that's my kind of
You can hold- You
sticky,
can hold in the town meeting, you can hold.
yeah, and that's my kind of sticky wicket on
not all of that.
approving this, because it's like you're approving the whole package,
Yeah,
right?
I would approve 2 out of 3.
And, right, and I don't know if I would approve all of them,
Right, so I don't know. Yeah,
so I don't,
That's my opinion. So can we vote on the individual?
That's a great question for our town council.
what do you think,
Can we?
town council?
We're just giving, we're just giving a
We're just giving a
We're
recommendation.
just giving a recommendation, so.
And we can also say selectmen will make recommendation at town
You
meeting.
can do either of those. You can, since, as you said, it's just a recommendation, so you can format it any way you want.
Okay.
I make a.
Do we want to format it differently? Do we want to think about it and come back to it next time? Do we want to change it up right now?
I'm prepared to vote, no. but-
Well, I think it's also the first time that you'd be recommending it differently.
Yep.
And I think, then again, as a respect, Sean, if you as the chair want to speak to the chair of CPC and
Yeah, I'd like to give him a
have
heads up.
discussion of how you want to present that before we
I think that's fair.
do that, we should do that.
Be good to hear from FinCom, too.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, I'll reach out to Jay and let him know what we're thinking. And I'm sure he's been one with the prioritizing as well, so
Yeah, he's.
I think we'll have a good conversation, and then at our next meeting, we'll talk about it some more.
Okay.
No vote yet on that one.
And then, one thing we missed is that we were gonna go through the, what vote is required. So we just stopped doing that up front. So for all the ones we just did on the financials, is that all simple majority? Or is that 4 out of 5 for all of them?
Oh, yeah, I know what you're saying.
It's usually in the script.
I know, we usually write it down here, don't we?
No. I don't think
It's usually
so.
in the script.
No, it's not usually in the script. It was in the script once and caused trouble. I really, really, really ask you not to put it in the article.
Article, okay.
Yeah.
I respect that.
Yeah, we'll take
Oh,
that to
because the
heart.
motion can change on the floor, and all things can
All right,
change.
now that's,
Don't
That
put it
can
here.
change, don't put it there.
all
All
right,
right.
that sounds good. All right, so I'll call J 2-9, annual budget for revolving funds. All right, and this is just a summary, is it authorizes the fiscal year 2020 expenditure caps on the town's revolving funds per Mass General Law, et cetera.
We haven't, no. Do we have a request to change the revolving fund on the Parks and Rec?
Not yet. It might come.
Is that the increase?
There might be an increase to the recreation revolving fund. I think all the other ones would probably remain the same.
Right, so we may have another article, or would it be in this?
No, it would be in this one.
I don't remember this in the past.
Yeah, it changed with the Municipal Modernization
Yeah.
Act.
Yeah, we have to do it
But,
every year now.
you know, this is,
So all you need to do now is vote the actual amount of the cap of the budget. So there's going to be some amount for example, rec revolving, you're going to set a budget cap of $900,000, whatever it might be. But everything else is covered by the bylaw.
Okay.
Thank you.
And so the possible change of this to Marissa.
from last year would just be the cap, the limit on the rec revolving. All the other ones, I would assume that, I would hope that it would stay about the same.
And the rec
So-
is 250
It's
now?
currently 250. We're looking to see if we're going to need because you can increase it during the fiscal year with the Board of Selectmen and FinCom's approval. So we might actually need to come to you in fiscal year 19 to increase it in 19. And that being the case, then I would say that for fiscal year 20, we would go with the highest number.
Important to keep in mind that the rec revolving fund, or all revolving funds, don't take any money from the general fund, so there's no hit to the taxpayer. Their only funds come from fees generated by that department, and they have to be spent on the things to support what the fees are for. But we have been close, I guess we were very close last year to our cap last year, and as Marissa just indicated, we are likely to go over it this year.
Wait, you just stop charging fees once you hit that cap? Is that
Well,
what
we
happens?
can't spend it.
We can't
Spend it, okay, we can collect.
And, you know, spending is part of running a program. You know, if you charge somebody fees to have golf lessons, and you have to then pay the golf instructor, and if you've hit your cap and you can't pay that person, then you're gonna have trouble doing more programming later on. So the idea would be that that would slow them down, being able to continue to do the programming. The good news is, the programs are popular, they get lots of people to come in, we have lots of expenses related to that, and we need to make sure that the cap reflects that.
And is that still based on some percentage?
No.
That revolve, not anymore? Okay.
What do we have to do with this one? What's our ask on this? Do we do anything at this one right now?
So if we were to approve the same limits, the limits on the recreation and parks, I would recommend to up it to 300,000. And then the pool is at 125, council on aging 20,000, and emergency clinics $20,000. Those were the limits that we had last year, with the exception of the recreation.
And going up 50,000 for recreation.
And what was the COA again?
20,000.
Thank you. So,
I would be okay with all that if anybody wants to make a motion.
I mean, since it's all supported by fees and
Right,
spent
it's
on the
not
programs,
any
then-
impact to the taxpayers.
It's like our local debate on the national debt. We just keep on raising it,
Right,
figure out what we spend.
you're right.
Sorry.
Make a motion the Board of Selectmen vote favorably for the,
Disagree with that characterization.
So Bill just made a
I make a
motion.
motion the Board of Selectmen vote favorably for the annual budget for revolving funds based on the numbers that Marissa just gave.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Allison abstain. All right, next one, 2-10, the HDC, Hamilton Development Corporation, and that is our meals tax, which is typically, I see the expected request is $65,000. It's been that way for some time now.
I'd like to make a correction to that. The expected ask is $74,880.
74.8, what was it?
$74,880.
What's that based on? It's just there.
So in the past, the ask has always been what we budgeted for meals tax.
And not what we received.
And not what we received. Obviously, we don't know what we're going to receive because the fiscal year hasn't ended yet. So I actually had to go through, and I had our town clerk help me through that, to go back to the articles of when it was approved and what the language was for it doesn't say that it's the budget. It says that the receipts from the meals tax goes to this fund. So my ask actually represents the last year's actual receipts. Obviously, it can't be fiscal year 19 because I don't know what they're going to be. But I think if we take that approach, we always, include,
last year's
yeah,
numbers.
exactly what the last fiscal year was, and that's what the 74,880 represents.
That seems logical.
Do we know what their balance is? Or once it leaves us? So
No, I can provide you with that.
I'm just wondering if they're actually spending the funds that were,
They have some funds accumulated, but they do expend some of the funds. Yeah, but I can provide you with that number.
Yeah, they've got the mortgage for Max.
Yeah,
Some other stuff,
yeah.
Benches.
benches.
and they're looking to do some improvements, downtown improvements.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Make a motion that the Board of Selectmen vote favorably for the Hamilton Development Corporation transfer of funds from meal tax of $74,000.
880.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
unanimous.
All right, OPEB Trust Fund, Article 2-11. And this is to see if the town will raise and appropriate transfer from available funds a sum of money for the purpose of funding OPEB.
Yep.
And
So
what is our,
$125,000. My understanding is that I can't say if it was the Board of Selectmen with the FinCom, but I have heard from the FinCom that they had agreed that they were going to increase this number by $25,000 until they reached the 125,000 number. So last year, I believe, was the first year that we requested the 125. So we're requesting the 125 once again. You will also notice that there's a separate article later in the warrant
that
to
was for this fund?
readopt the MGL so that we could create an irrevocable trust. And that was a request from the FinCom.
Where is it?
Where is that one?
It's 5-1.
My version here doesn't have it for some reason.
Or blank?
But we had it, because Marissa and I were both looking at it earlier today.
But, so just for us, that's got the blank space here, and the folks at home,
Placeholder. Placeholder.
page 10?
7. Page 7 in ours.
Page 7 in ours. Sorry. We had a request from FinCom, which we think will be best practice. We currently have a OPEB fund that is, I don't want to say it's not secure, but a town meeting vote can take the money out of OPEB and use it for another thing. So So what we're doing as far as best practice is making our OPEB trust fund an actual fund that is only used for OPEB. Does that explain it to everybody?
We talked about that. and
We talked
agreed,
about
yeah.
it previously.
Yeah, we talked about
so.
that previously, yeah. Makes sense.
Anything to add to that, Marissa? Donna?
I mean,
Or is-
I think that, the FinCom felt more comfortable that if it was created as an irrevocable trust. There's a lot of discussion about whether, once you adopt a law, whether it becomes an irrevocable trust or not, and you have different opinions about it. Our auditors, our external auditors, are of the opinion that if it's not an irrevocable trust, they don't consider that as plan assets to the trust, because at any point in time, someone could come to town meeting and say, I want to transfer out of this fund. Not that I think that anyone would do that,
Right.
but I heard that there was going to be an IGR coming out about it. I haven't seen it yet, but I believe that's a little bit of the background that I have on it. And Donna has...
I just wanted to let you know this won't be the final word on this. If this is approved at town meeting, we're going to have a trust agreement that will need to be signed, and that's going to specify a lot of the control of the money.
The details, right. And whether it's in the treasurer collector's office for investment and stuff like that. Is that what we're speaking to?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I just handed you was that new Article 5-1 with a summary that it kind of explains what Marissa and Donna just laid out for you, so.
Right, so it will allow, basically, this will allow us to change from what we have to what's being recommended to us, but there's still details that will need to be ironed out when we get to that point, after we've been approved to change it, correct, Donna?
You need to create a trust agreement.
Right.
What vote does that need? What vote does that?
No separate vote. We're going to cover that when we get to 5-1.
No vote, sorry. When we
Is it
no,
simple
I'm just
majority, or is
curiosity,
it?
5-1.
I'm sorry, what?
When we vote on 5-1 in town, is it just a simple majority?
It's simple majority.
Okay.
All right, so moving back to 211.
Can we vote both of them now?
Yeah, I was going to say, if we could
I move
combine
that the
them.
Board of Selectmen recommend favorable action on Articles 2-11 and 5-1.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Did you just say 5-1's language is not final here? Or it is final? I know you said we'll have to take additional steps, but is this language in 5-1 final?
The language in the article is final, but yes, the extra steps will be the separate trust agreement.
Perfect, thank you.
So there's been a motion and a second.
And 4 of us voted?
Allison?
And Allison, we're waiting on your vote. Okay, unanimous. All right. We're getting there. Patton homestead operating budget. Let's see if the town will raise and appropriate funds to the Patton homestead. And basically, this is the annual upkeep of the Patton homestead. And I believe Scott has a summary, and Marissa, you might have some more details on the budget, which is in front of us. Here's the Patton homestead operating summary.
Excuse me. Yeah, so you have the Patton Homestead operating summary. This is really just a summary of the operating budget. It does not include any capital. I just want to point that out because that has been reserved for capital expenditures. So this would be what we're estimating the fund to end up with at the end of fiscal year 19. Obviously, it's an estimated number. And then what we're proposing for fiscal year 20. It includes the rental revenue, event revenue, $30,000 of unreserved fund balance, and then asking for a transfer from the general fund of $86,343, and then it has all the expenditures adding up to the total of $152,343.
So the ask is 86,343 or 152?
The ask from the general fund is $86,343. And there's also something to be said about that. The direct and indirect costs of 42,292. So some of the funds would actually be returning to the general fund, because one of the big expenses that is listed here is the direct and indirect costs. And as I mentioned, for the water enterprise fund, this relates mostly with health insurance, time spent from other offices, but life insurance, workers' comp, retirement. So that's what really that number is. So all of those expenditures get paid in the general fund. So that would be the share from the Patton.
Where is that again? Where's the share of all those?
The 42,292, where it says direct and indirect costs.
Got it.
The last line.
Yep.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, we're asking for 86,343 from the general fund, and then the general fund will get back $43,000. I'm sorry, just over $42,000.
So the impact is 43,000?
The impact's about
Yeah.
40.
The impact's a little.
And what did we ask for
40,000.
last meeting? What was the ask? It was 75,000?
The last one was 90,000.
95 or something.
Yeah.
And that, does this number assume that the rent, is assuming the rental income is 36,000?
No, the 6,000 is the rental.
Just the 6,000, not the
And then
30?
$30,000 is like event revenue.
Well, right,
Yeah,
okay.
yes,
So-
yes. So the total would be the
Provide revenue.
36,000, yes.
And we are working on the business plan. Kaylee is already working on it. We're working on presenting a business plan as quickly as possible. We're working on creating and having a business plan ready as soon as possible.
The new director has jumped in with both feet. She's doing great so far.
Just to
Yeah.
point out, this is adding about 7 cents to our tax rate. What it comes out to.
7 cents per 100,000, so we're adding
So this is just
40,000,
shy.
so it's like 3.5,
No, we're asking $85,000 from the general fund.
but 42 gets paid back. That's what I was trying to understand. So what's the
Yeah.
actual ask?
It also assumes 36,000 in rental income too, so. I mean, if the ask is 85,000, did we get the 40,000 back from last year? Like, did the same
It was
thing happen with
20,000
the
last
indirect?
year.
Oh, okay.
Actually, the
Right.
net, if you look at the net impact to general fund, it actually goes down
Yeah.
from an FY19 from 69,000 to 43,000. So it's lower.
It's still on our tax rate.
Any other questions? Discussion? Motions?
I move that the Board of Selectmen recommend favorable action on Article 2-12.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain, Mary Ellen.
Abstention, Jeff?
Opposed.
Opposed? Complicating my notes here. Okay.
That gets us through the
Is-
financial.
I was gonna say, are you off the
Finally
hook
back to
then,
me.
Marissa?
I'm sorry?
Will the free cash thing, did that go away? We
We're
eliminate that?
gonna make that go away. We'll talk about that when we get to the end here.
So you can, but that's all.
Any other comments, Marissa, while we've got you captive?
I still have more stabilization funds.
Oh.
Capital stabilization.
They're
Are we
in
not
my-
looking at the same?
What articles are they, do you know?
2-13, 2-14, 2-15,
Missing-
and it goes on.
Guess I'm
Those
missing
aren't in our warrant.
missing a page here. Sorry, Marissa.
Yeah, none of those are in front of us.
So what did,
Oh. Okay.
Dated 3/1, so Friday at 9 o'clock in the morning. These must have happened after.
we're missing pages 7, 8, 9? Or 7 and 8?
I would,
9.
And 10, and 11.
No, 10 and 11.
11 should be in there.
Yeah, just whatever, print from 212 on.
I'll just tip that
Big
down.
vote.
Some of those are finance articles.
I'm sorry?
Some of the later ones aren't finance articles, so you don't have to state.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So how much, there's two, what, 13, 2-13, 2-14, and 2-15?
No, it goes 2-20.
We need a bigger boat.
We need a bigger boat.
I'll say that a lot of them have to do with the capital.
Right, the capital
So,
stabilization.
you kind of have that had that discussion already.
Right, we've been through all that, right? So it should go fairly quickly, once it's in front of us. It's just talking about the transfer from free cash. So, I'll wait till Allison gets back.
We voted another one while we're making copies.
Just wait till Allison gets back and then.
Sorry about that.
These are done? Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, back on track. 2-13, Stabilization Fund. See if town will raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds, a sum of money to the Stabilization Fund, etc. And so this article replenishes the Stabilization Fund for future appropriations.
So the number here is 322,654, and this has to do with our adopted financial policies. It actually represents 1% of.
I'll give you when I'm done. Go ahead.
Of the general fund revenues. That's how our the policy read. So that's what that calculation represents. And this is it would be from free cash. So we're just moving it from one bucket to another. It doesn't affect the tax rate at all.
And the dollar amount again was what?
$322,654.
This is 2-12?
Theoretically, next year, that number would be a lot smaller, right? Because we'll already be at the 1%.
Could be a lot smaller, yes.
Could you give us that number again, Marissa, just so Joe can...
322,654.
All right, I'm gonna, if anybody has any comments on it, anybody? Since we've already talked about it kind of ad nauseum. Let's move on to the next one. Can we vote on both at the same time since we're moving right along here? I know we've kind of both have talked about them previously, so, and so Marissa can get out of here quicker.
Yep. Stabilization.
2-14 is a capital stabilization fund. This is to see if we'll establish a capital stabilization fund for the special purpose of funding capital budgets and all incidental and related costs. This is something we've just created through our grant with the state to improve our financial practices, and this is one of the things that we have established or are hoping to establish.
You know what, can you tell us the
579,122.
579,122. Okay. And with both of these, Marissa, these are coming from
Free cash.
so there will be no impact on the tax rate.
Yeah,
Yes.
zero impact.
And it's based on a percentage, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know if you'll put that in the brief summary on what it's.
Yeah, we'll rewrite the summary to include.
Percentage.
Yeah, yep. Both summaries will be rewritten.
I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen vote favorably on both Article 2-13 for Stabilization Fund and 2-14 for Capital Stabilization Fund.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
Abstention from Allison.
Okay. Grant appropriations, 2-15,
2-15. We've got,
about $4,000.
yeah,
Yep.
to fund some grant deficiencies, basically, and close out funds.
Yes. So this is just a cleanup warrant. I've been trying to do this, I think, in the last couple town meetings, just going through some of the old funds that we have or funds that had deficits for a long period of time and have no activity in the funds. So I've been trying to clean them up and close them. This is actually an active grant, but this deficit goes back quite a number of years. I mean, those grant years have been closed. They're done. So I'm just requesting that, we fund it to clean it up and pretty much bring the grant back to a balance.
It's one specific grant or a combination?
Yes, this particular one is actually just one grant.
What is it? What is it?
It's the E911 grant, which is used by the police department. And again, it's reconciled for the recent years. This is something from, it's probably 5 years or older. So the new grant years, they're all reconciled, but this number, you can't clean it up, really.
It was on the list that you gave us the last meeting before. We had all the...
Yes, that's one of the grants that is always on that special revenue list. It has all the, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Tell me what the exact amount that you're asking for in this one?
$4,396.94.
Yeah, because there's a handful in there that were like $30 and stuff like that.
Yes.
That were left in the fund, and
I suggest we also in the description there put old E911 grant.
Yeah.
deficits.
yeah,
I've
from
made a
5
note
years
here
ago.
with a summary, yeah.
Okay. Anybody want to?
I move that the Board of Selectmen recommend favorable action on Article 2-15.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
Allison abstain. All right, 2-16, I'm going to assume that's personnel service.
Yes.
We've got personal in there, again, just a typo. Personnel service and, as soon as Joe moves his hand, and union contracts.
This is the article we talked about earlier, kind of having a sum of money aside to balance union contracts.
Yes, so this article would be for, any negotiations of union contracts or any other changes. If it's not union-related, non-union, there's an estimate there to cover those costs.
Okay.
And that's $87,415.
$87,450.
This is known or this is potential?
It's potential.
Because we've got three.
And again, the reason why I had requested it to be in a separate article would be that if it doesn't get used, you could carry it forward, for a future year, and that way you wouldn't have to reappropriate.
Re-ask
6 cents appropriately, approximately. On the
on the tax rate, 6 cents.
tax rate, 6 cents.
Okay. How do we feel about it? Anybody feel like they want to make a motion?
Why, sure. I recommend that the Board of Selectmen, or I move the Board of Selectmen recommend favorable action on Article 2-16.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Allison abstain. All right, debt water distribution system, Article 2-17. The town CFO will amend its action taken under Article 2-14 of the warrant at the annual town meeting on April 11th, 2015, which the vote authorized borrowing of $5 million to pay costs of water distribution system improvements, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto.
So this is actually an allowance to open this article up to be used for other things. The authorization for the bonding was out there, but it was very narrowly defined on what could be used there. My understanding is this has been done once before on a previous borrowing for the water plant? No?
But it still relates to the water.
It still relates to the
right.
water distribution system.
This is
and improvements to the.
Make it a little easier to spend it on
Right.
water distribution instead of just the infrastructure of the pipe, right?
Right.
Basically.
Right.
Do we want to add anything to the summary there? It's fairly brief.
I'm
think
gonna
it-
work with Tim to beef up this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think you need a little bit more in the summary. Just to say that I would say that we're limited, and that this would help free up this to pay for other water system improvements.
In summary, this is the second authorization of the $10 million that was approved for the water distribution. When the vote was taken, there was specific language on what they were going to be used for. The second one, I believe it was stated that it was going to be used for the water distribution phase 2. And we're pretty much done with that phase, and Tim would like to expand the language to authorize the use for the facilities as well, and not just the distribution piece.
That makes sense to me.
And there's no impact on the tax rate because it gets paid out of debt service in the Water Enterprise Fund.
Mm-hmm.
There's no anticipated
There's no impact.
Impact on the tax rate.
So we can cross that off. The fiscal impact is 0. All right.
Does this go along with the second one, or does the second one need to be bonded?
The second one hasn't been authorized to be borrowed yet.
All right, so I'll make a motion that Board of Selectmen vote favorably on Article 2-17 for water distribution system debt service.
Any second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
I abstain.
Allison abstains. And moving on to 218, debt for the water treatment plant. The town will appropriate $1,500,000 or some other amount to pay costs of water treatment plant improvements project, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto.
So you did a lot of work up at the water treatment plant. I will have Tim in to talk to you more about this. You've done a lot of work up to the water treatment plant. And when we went to reactivate the wells that had been taken down, they discovered that there is now likely a need for pre-treatment. The issue is that there are organics in that well source, and that it rises to a level of us not being able to use that water. The EP's monitoring it. We've been able to keep it under, but in order to be able to fully access the water in that well, it's likely that we're going to need to have some form of a kind of a pre-treatment phase system. And Tim is working on estimates with Dewberry, the town's consultant on that project now, but the consultant has said it could likely be between $1 million and $1.5 million for a system that would add into pre-treat for the organics in the water.
What's the timing of this?
Sooner than later, if we get the authorization to do it, we try to do it all in the next fiscal year, because it really just does have to do with water quality and what we're allowed to have in the water. So
this expands capacity beyond the 900,000 plus gallons a day we get after the.
It doesn't expand capacity. It makes sure that we're not, allowing contaminated water to go into the system. And we aren't allowing contaminated water to go into the system, so that's why I was trying to skirt it and not say that. We are not allowing contaminated water to go into the system. But the use of that well will have to be heavily monitored until we can find some way to, and even once
we found this out because we revamped all the filters and started basically drawing more water through some wells that we hadn't been using before.
I think that, the level of water in the level of water in that watershed area and stuff, and, a lot of marshy area, there's a lot of different things that contribute to what's in that ground, as far as organic materials, and we need to treat it in a different way. Tim's much better at describing the technicality of this than I am. we could even bring in the folks from Dewberry to
I mean,
explain.
it sounds like a viable project, I just don't know if we can vote on it tonight without having a little more
Yeah.
information. Just to do our due diligence.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Ready for a vote?
Scott?
Well, I mean, I remember buying a fire truck not so long ago for $1 million because the last one was falling apart. And
Right.
all of a sudden we had to do it. So I guess if we gotta do it, we gotta do it.
Right.
But, and this was kind of unknowable until the filters were cleaned up and we started pumping more
Put
water.
everything back online, right?
I'd
And
suggest
my
that you,
concern, I guess, is things happen. But we also have decided not to cut back on the capital plan or estimates for connecting to Manchester.
Right.
As part of the redevelopment of Chabaco Road, which gets us a whole new water source.
Right.
we don't know the quality of that water yet either. That was,
Yeah, except all of
Hesitation there.
Manchester's living off of it.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I guess I'd like to hear,
Okay.
like, we're gonna lose
Right, I'd
a
like to
third of
know
our
the.
water,
right.
or, I don't know, I think we need
Right, what
something
are the-
behind the rationale.
What are
of
the
urgency
consequences
of
if
this.
we don't, right? I mean,
And-
we have less safe water, but we're not putting unsafe water out there now, but
Right.
we're just, we're limiting our capacity to process, I think.
I just, not to diss you at all, Joe, but I don't
No.
feel comfortable knowing really what's behind this one.
Yeah,
After all the effort that was, thoroughly
Right.
vetted about all the filter, going back to the old
All the
treatment
green
process that
sand
we used to
and, yeah.
have, and reviews of the water treatment plants. I guess I'd like to get Tim to come to our next meeting.
yep.
I was planning to have him at the next meeting anyway.
All right.
All right, so we'll move on that one. 2-19, debt Chabaco Road paving project, to see if the town will appropriate $1 million or some other amount to pay costs of paving Chabaco Road, et cetera. And so this is borrowing to fund paving Chabaco Road to the Manchester by the Sea Town line.
It's been a viable project. How close is this estimate to being accurate? How far have they gone with estimating?
We've done pretty good. We had a plan drawn up several years ago. We had a second engineer take a look at it. We actually think that the total cost would be somewhere around $1.2 million to $1.3 million, because we have to return the road to the right-of-way as opposed to where it is now, et cetera. But Tim has some availability of leftover Chapter 90 funds from previous years, so his goal was to offset some of that cost, those funds, and borrow the difference. So the ask is for $1 million here, I think.
And is the ask for $1 million, are we just road? Like, I'm thinking,
Yes.
since we're talking Manchester
So-
too, with water main, et
So-
cetera.
The ask right now is to do just road, but Tim's already talked to the engineer about constructing the road in such a way that we would leave a shoulder that would be developed later. If we decide to add water main, we run the water main
Okay.
down the shoulder and then pave over it later.
Okay, good.
So-
I'm glad there's
So
some forward thinking there.
There's a way to add that in later on if we need it. We don't have to dig up the new road we just paved.
No, that would be so counterproductive. I don't
Have
want
we
it.
ever gotten, just, not that it's related to this, but just budgets down the road, Cutler Road, have we ever budgeted Cutler, to pave Cutler?
I don't think they have. Certainly not since Tim's.
In the Wayback Machine,
Wayback Machine.
way back,
Way back.
the state was actually willing to pay, and it was all one thing.
Cutler,
I've been in
Winthrop,
multiple
and
meetings with
Chabaco.
Representative Hill and the neighbors on Chabaco, so I've heard all of this history. The state was actually willing to pay for Winthrop, Cutler, and Chabaco at one point, but we didn't want those paved. The neighbors of Chabaco Road want the road paved, so that's clear. Before, I think that was a little unclear. People wanted it, it was a nice remote area. The condition of the road has been incredibly difficult to manage. Tim's brought in special equipment, tried to do different tilling, all sorts of things. And, firemen don't even want to drive down there. It hurts the trucks. The feds, postal delivery is denied delivery at different times because of the condition of the road. So, to me, I was was also asked them, I said, you know, if it gets paved, people are gonna start driving faster in a remote area. And the neighbors understand that, and they also understand that it also means the road is moving from the current location where it is to actual where the proper town property is. So, to me, the compelling thing is the neighbors are good with this. And that if you ask the fire department, even police going down there or mail there, they've almost had it. They can barely maintain any speed and they can't get down there urgently.
The one concern of permitting is that it does go through a watershed area, a resource area, but in a brief conversation with the conservation agent, he represented that in the past, one of the questions had always been, well, what would the runoff from the pavement do to the water? But now the larger concern is the silting. Now the larger concern is the silting of the dirt road. Silting into the resource area has become a larger problem for them. There are other ways we could try to protect against runoff getting into the catch basins and the like. So goal would be to design the road in that way so that the.
To me, I think this is an article worth bringing to town meeting
Yeah, we go to the town line, which would leave about 500 feet of unpaved road at the end on the Manchester side.
On Pine, whatever it's called, Pine?
Road, yeah.
Pine Road.
It might not even be a whole 500 feet.
Have we talked to Manchester about this proposal? They know what we're doing?
We've talked in generalities and in brief discussions about that and about the potential of having us tie into the water plant, et cetera. There is some interest for them, even tying into the water source, but part of their interest would be for us to take over running their water plant. They currently contract that service out at some expense, and they would rather have us do it. The problem for us is then we'd have to have staff up enough to run 2 water plants and have 2 different operators. Theirs is actually a higher level water plant than ours. We operate with a level 3 treatment, water distribution plant. They have a level 4. So we don't even have anybody on our current staff that's qualified to do that. So that has the hesitation in tying the water main project into this right now is, first of all, that jumps from being a $1.2 million project to being closer to $3.7 million, and we don't even sure yet what all the costs would be to do that. As far as, if we do that, Manchester may want us to run their water plant. That means more staffing for us, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Right.
I didn't think that was a plan that was ready to be vetted this year.
I think that's good. I think just the paving and the forward thinking to add the shoulder in a way that we can add water infrastructure into it is sound. So I'd entertain a motion if anybody wants to make it, unless there's more discussion.
I think it's something that needs to get to town meeting for everybody to
I agree.
Decide on. So I move this Selectmen recommend favorable action on Article 2-19.
2-19.
19?
2-19.
2-19.
Yep.
I thought you said 3-19.
Sorry, 2-19?
Yep. 2-19. So there's been a motion. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Jeff? A no or an abstain?
Opposed.
Opposed, all right.
Is that 3-1 or 4-1?
Allison said yes, correct, Allison?
Correct.
All right. 4-1. All right, 220, Town Hall improvements debt, see if the town will appropriate, is this number correct, 550,000?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Representative of the 700 minus the 150 that has been approved
Right.
by CPC.
To pay costs of town OPM and design services, including costs of all incidental related thereto. And this article authorized borrowing funds that cover the cost of an OPM, owner's project manager, and design services for improvement of the town hall.
So who's going to present this at town meeting?
The Town Hall Building Committee.
It's going to be I think it's a viable project. Need to have. It's going to be a tough ask because I don't know how. I know the committee's been working hard, but I don't know what the consensus is in the community and what they know. So we're going to get anything out there before we talked about getting the options out there, right?
Starting to get that out there at their next meeting later this week, right?
Yeah,
Well, I think that would be-
Wednesday.
And I'm in favor of it. I just want to help.
Need more info, right?
I want to help it get out there and
Oh, the committee voted at its last meeting to start bringing in representatives from other committees to get them involved in the process and to release the two proposals right now.
Any questions on this one? No? All right. Anybody want to make a motion?
Make a motion that the, sorry, go ahead.
Board of Selectmen approve Article 2-19.
20.
20, sorry.
That's okay.
20.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, unanimous. All right, is that it for financial
Now we're
stuff?
done with Marissa.
You got more secret ones in there, in the back pocket?
I was just going to refer to 6-1, which is usually the free cash.
Free cash.
I-
Yeah, let's talk about it real quick, just while Marissa's here. Joe and I had talked about this. I don't know if it's on the copy you have, since we got a couple different copies, but Joe and I talked about removing it from the warrant, just because we're going to end that practice of applying free cash to offset the tax rate. And we've had all this kind of input on best practice, and we're steering away from it, so
Yep.
we thought taking it off would be prudent.
That's a good idea.
Anybody have any opposition to that?
Theoretically, how much money would there be available in keeping with our financial policies? How much is left?
A little over 900 grand, I think.
Yeah.
Free cash.
I have that number.
Forget the likely ending balance, somewhere around there.
Yeah, it was close to $1 million. I
I'm
think.
just thinking of the prezzo the last prezzo we went over.
We would have about $1.8 million.
Of free
1,008,000?
cash? No, after all the
Yeah.
moves to stabilization funds and,
Yep. We got certified at 2.7. We're asking or requesting about $942,000, which is for the capital stabilization, the general stabilization, the prior year grant deficit of $4,300, and the prior year bill. So that would leave us about 1.8. So we would be at about 5.6%, and our financial policies state that we should be at least 5%.
So do you know what the 6%, the 0.6% is?
Yeah, I don't do math in my head that well, but but I can give you that number.
All right.
All right, anything else? Everybody okay with taking that off?
yep.
Well, no, I mean, it depends on the number. That's a lot of money, and our tax rate is going up significantly, and I'm just, depending on how much is left, I'm just wondering if,
You want to apply that to the tax
yeah,
rate?
something to it.
Yeah, I think we've been moving to not
The
do
financial
it.
policy that we
Right,
voted is not to do that.
This is taxpayer money that we're holding on to, so that,
Be used for
what?
Free cash.
free cash.
Yeah, but that's
We don't,
sitting
the whole
in,
idea was we're trying to keep the tax rate.
Right, and our recommendation was 5%. We're at 5.5, 5.6%.
5.6, so yeah,
So,
Well, the policy states that we should be at least
five.
at 5%.
So
Yeah.
5.6
And it
we're
does
well
say
within.
in the policies, it does say that we should move away of using free cash to balance or to reduce the tax
right,
rate.
no, I understand that, I'm with that.
So
I'm-
we're probably looking at about $110,000.
That's it?
Yeah.
So I think we should leave it on and get some recommendation from our FinCom.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what the FinCom says.
all right.
Thanks for doing that math.
No problem.
That would lower our tax by 7 cents.
I think that ends your
I think so.
section with us. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you
appreciate all
very
your hard
much.
work and
Thank
staying
you.
here so late tonight.
No problem, thanks. If any other questions
Meet
come up,
every
please
night.
let me know. Yeah.
All right.
So we're back to the 3-1.
3-1. Signed by law.
So signed bylaw was in your packet. It's a 2-page, double-sided. So the summary of that is that although we're looking at changing our signage bylaw, this is a very small change. This is just I'll read the verbiage and we can talk about it. This article seeks to add language to the existing bylaw to allow temporary signs. While temporary signs still have to conform to the requirements of the bylaw, they would not require further approvals or permit if they were not up for more than 2 months per year, and if related to an election and were removed within 5 days after the election. Only 5 temp signs are permitted at any one time per lot. So basically, the bylaw changes to add temporary signs. So it adds a definition for temporary signs, and then it says that that they still have to conform to all the requirements of it, but you don't need to go get a permit to do it. You don't need a building permit. You don't need a ZBA. You don't need anything. You just can put them up for 2 months, take them down after the election, or. So that is that's the gist of what I got from Patrick. But Donna's going to correct me.
So I don't think Patrick's given you the latest version.
No.
Okay.
The problem that I had with the version that you were just referring to is it relies on the content of the sign to determine when it needs to be removed around election time. If it's related to an election, then it's got to come down in a certain period of time, and that's not a constitutional factor that one can now take into account for signs. So to try to keep the same intent of the bylaw, we've said that a certain number of signs can be put up temporarily, and I think it's one per, I can't remember if it's one per lot or one per parcel. But in any event, the language talks about you can have one sign for a permanent sign. You can have temporary signs that are defined not by what their content is, but how long they stay up and whether they're sandwich signs or permanently affixed. But for elections, I think we increased it to there could be 5 signs placed on properties, a maximum of 5 signs placed on properties within a certain amount of time before an election and can remain for a certain time after. The signs don't have to be related to the election because we're trying to avoid a content-based factor, but otherwise we tried to keep that intent. So I believe that's the version that the planning board's upcoming hearing is on. Is the hearing tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yes.
Yeah.
No, we're not going to vote until the 19th.
Yeah.
So bottom line here, are we clarifying our current bylaw? Are we making it more restrictive?
No,
more
we're
user-friendly? Is it?
Making it more user-friendly. We don't have any way of managing temporary signs. So we're adding it's not like it was there before and it was bad. There's nothing in our current
no
bylaw
language at all
about temporary signs.
Okay.
And what problem are we solving? Because there's signs that are staying up too long?
No, our sign bylaw right now is not enforceable because it is content-based.
I get it, but
So
the signs
we need
come
to
down.
replace it.
I'm not saying our current one is right.
Yeah.
But we're engineering something.
But what's
to
the
solve
problem where-
what? The
right.
signs already come down. I mean, do people leave the signs up too long?
No, people are going and getting a permit for temporary signs if they do the right thing. And we're saying we don't need to waste our town officials' time to do permits for temporary signs. That's what we're solving.
Does this include the banners that come before the selectmen? So, but those we approve
that's
on.
town
That's within the
It's not on private
definition of a
property.
sign.
This is,
These are for placement on private property, right?
No, these apply to, the sign bylaw, like all our zoning bylaws, applies to all property in town,
Including town properties.
including town property.
So in the future, if this goes ahead as written, anyone can put a sign up on the tennis courts they want to?
No, you're still the landowner,
Yeah.
so you still
We still have
approve.
to approve it. All right.
Yeah, you still approve it as a landowner, but
building permit. Right now, you need to get a building permit to put up a temporary sign. And we're saying we're not going to use our resources to make people do that. Either our resources, our citizen resources, to go to a building permit for a temporary sign.
Do we have that many people putting up temporary signs?
Well, a lot of them, if you actually look around.
Then my next question is, we getting revenue from that? Or are they just applying for building?
No, there's
No, we don't get revenue.
There's no revenue, there's no charge.
They're
for
just
that.
applying for it. We say, okay, approve.
Well, and
Well, they're
more
not
what's going to
applying.
most people
Or
are.
they're not.
We
Right.
have two issues. One, we're not enforcing, so if somebody puts up 100 signs, whatever, we can't enforce it. Number two is maybe people want to put up signs and they look at the burden to do it.
Right.
They're having a sale, they're having a plant sale, and they can't put them up, they don't put them up, they don't do it, so
Is there some offensive thing going on that is the genesis?
just
of
trying to make
all
it
this?
better.
We're trying to make it
To
compliant with the
administrate
law.
what, though? That,
I just
do we
gave
have
you
a problem?
I just gave you two examples.
It's just clarifying it, making it more concise, and to Donna's point, it's not a content-based.
They're gonna revamp it further, but this is the first step of a few other changes.
And
so.
there's 8 people running for school committee. Somebody, like, the places where some people put up signs for everybody, they couldn't do that?
Yeah, so I'm thinking like, still the gas station in town here
Those
before
are
was
five,
Cumberland
right.
Farms
It
and
seems-
stuff like that, used to have a dozen signs in front of it.
I know that's a lot of signs, but
Right.
those are all the people who are running for our election.
Right, so under the current bylaw, all of those people putting up those election signs were supposed to get building permits. They haven't done that. We haven't enforced that for very good reasons.
So if I wanted to put up a sign in my front yard, I would theoretically have to go to the building department now.
Correct.
Let's see. Well, I don't want to go to the building department to put up a temporary sign.
Right. Hence,
That's the genesis.
so it's
of this.
either people are doing it, people aren't doing it, so we're trying to solve both of them.
Right,
We're putting them up without it, and people who are not putting up because they don't want to go through the burden of
right.
getting a building permit for a sign.
And it does define a temporary sign as something that would be up for a couple of months,
Months,
therefore,
yeah.
therefore, you know, if somebody puts up a temporary sign to advertise an open house, and
Right.
the date of the open house passes, and it's been more than 2 months, we can send the building inspector by and say, hey, am I taking down that sign?
And the,
Because
It gives us
kinda-
teeth to,
The only negative, I see the only negative of it is what Scott just says, if someone wants to put up, if they, for some reason, they want to put up 10 signs in their front yard, but maybe, you
Or
know,
my house is for sale for 3 months.
I think for sale signs,
Well, you can go get a
house for sale
building
signs are
permit for that.
allowed differently, aren't they?
no, because that's content-based.
Yep.
So, yeah, no, we've tried to cover that part, but I'd say the problem with saying, the problem is you're saying, well, of course, we're not going to enforce, election signs that are
Right.
10 instead of 5. The problem you run into is then you find people, as has happened in Wellesley recently, where people say, if you're trying to enforce it for this person, but not for this person, it's really based on the content of my sign. You don't like the candidates that I'm supporting, and that's why you're going after me, because I have 10 signs as opposed to this person has 8. We're trying to set a bylaw that makes sense and is enforceable in a non-discriminatory manner.
gotcha.
Feels like we're legislating something that we don't have a problem for.
We don't have a problem now because we're not enforcing our bylaw.
But also the stuff that's out there, are there a lot of complaints? I don't know. I don't know. Are there a lot of complaints?
Can I take my town council hat off and my citizen
yeah,
hat?
shout
Yeah,
out.
I think there's I don't like our proliferation of signs. I think our signs around town are really getting out of control. I'd love to see an enforceable, non-discriminatory bylaw.
Who enforces this? Our shared service with Wenham that just went up?
Mm-hmm.
This sign bylaw, did we borrow bits of it from other places, or is this all brand new from what we've currently got?
Done to polish it,
Are
but
we,
it's a one-liner. I mean, it's a one sentence.
I mean, are we literally changing this much and what we
No,
currently have? kind of thing,
if
or-
that's the last one the bill has seen, that is not the current version.
Okay.
The current version that they'll be looking at tomorrow is more extensive than that, and it comes from, I'm a member of the International Municipal Lawyers Association. You might remember there was in 2015 the Reed versus Town of Gilbert, Arizona Supreme Court case that set all sign bylaws around the country on their ears. They drafted a model ordinance that they recommended that communities consider. This is a much simpler version of what they recommend.
Okay.
I think we should put something out on social media or somewhere, just to our residents, say, we're having a hearing about this, learn more about it.
Tomorrow night.
And I agree that we should be putting something forward, but we should be
Yeah.
telling
We
them.
don't always need a problem to fix a problem. I mean, I don't think we need, I mean, I think it's the right thing to do. It's and it's gonna avoid, down the road, we're gonna say, oh, we should have done this. We're gonna,
Well,
something's gonna
it
happen.
seems like
Yeah.
it will close the loop on
Yeah,
litigation if something happens similar to what
Yeah.
you said with the other town with the content-based stuff.
Yeah, so what happened in Wellesley was somebody put up a huge banner on the second floor of his house that said impeach Trump. And it was, I don't know, like 30 square feet or something, this huge sign. And the building inspector sent him a cease and desist, told him to put it down and fined him because it was bigger than their sign bylaw. And the ACLU got involved, and the owner said, well, you didn't enforce the bylaw against the people supporting Trump who had the sign just as big. On advice of town council, that cease and desist was removed. As far as I know, the sign, this huge banner is still there. The neighbors hate it. You know, it's this huge eyesore, and it's in Wellesley. And they can't enforce their bylaw because not only, their bylaw is actually not too bad, but it has been discriminatorily enforced.
Right.
It has not been consistently enforced on a non-content-based factor.
Are there fines within this
There are.
language?
yeah.
And we have fines in our zoning bylaw generally.
So we'll clean this up and look at it again, but that's
Yeah.
what's coming before you.
All right.
And it has for publication, you know, all zoning bylaw changes have to be published in the newspaper for 2 weeks consecutively, and that's been done with all 3 of these zoning bylaw changes.
Does tomorrow night close public hearings on it, or this is the first one?
19.
So there's 2, right?
This
We
one.
need 2
I have
for
a
each
feeling
one.
Jeff Mealy should plan a lot of time around this warrant article.
So tomorrow night's first public hearing, then there's a second one, right?
For all
usually?
3 of these, right?
Yeah, for all 3.
All right.
All right, next one is inclusionary housing bylaw. You might as well stay up there, Donna. This article seeks to change 3 items in the existing bylaw. Number 1 is to add the definition of what AMI, because we refer to it, but we don't define it in our bylaws. So we're just cleaning it up by adding the definition section.
That makes
Number
sense.
2, we're amending the formula for the fee in lieu of building affordable housing to do currently 2 times 80% of the AMI to 3 times, which is equivalent to $81,100. And the last item was to, we just talked about it, but we're gonna look into it. We just talked about this before we got into the finance, but Don's gonna look into 55 or 62 for the, if you can include age restrictive affordable housing in senior housing bylaw.
On B, is it worth putting in the number before the $81,100 increase?
Sorry, what?
So he says currently we're at 2 times 80% AMI, and then you're saying you're going to change it to 3%,
That would make,
and that's going to add $81,000 onto that
Right.
previous number, but there's no previous number there.
it'd just be easier to
Just
say
an increase, but yeah, it goes from
243,300.
160 to
Yeah.
240.
For
Yeah, I would
160,
Yeah, I can add
200
that.
to,
Yeah.
That way people know what it is currently and what it's going to or whatever.
So do people want to vote on this or wait until we know whether it's 55 or 62 on the age restriction?
And I can't remember, and I'm thinking back to the FinCom meeting that we had the joint meeting with, and then we had left and I'd watched the rest of it, and Patrick was talking about the difference between the 55 and the 62, and something with developers thinking that there wouldn't be much difference with the 55 and 62 as far as marketability. I can't remember all the
What
details.
Patrick said to me is he thought developers wouldn't want to develop 62 plus, but they would want to develop 55 plus,
Right.
which I value his opinion, but I find it interesting because most people don't move into such
Well,
developments
they're
at 55.
Right.
They're usually over 62, so I don't, doesn't,
Right.
I don't know, I don't know if I believe that theory.
Right.
But that was his basis for it. I mean, I think the town should still look to build age 62 plus, age-restricted housing if it is legal to do so and would be counted towards our sheet. And I think that and I think we're always late to this game. But so I don't think, I think people would still want to move into that development, but that's only my personal,
9 times out of 10, they're gonna pay the fee instead of billing it, so if you leave that option to the pay, they're
no,
gonna.
no, no, no,
Yeah.
this also includes just the building 55 at all and over, as opposed to 62 and over, and affordability. I think they might, I don't know. I think it garners more discussion.
I think people want them. I think the developer will always choose to pay the money than to build the unit, is my point.
But they, when I watched the hearings for them coming forward, they said, gotta pay you because you can't get the affordable units. And we actually put in our permit, they had to build them, but then the state weighed in and said, no, I'm changing I'm enforcing a different policy. So I don't know, I think.
Anything that helps move the needle to get more affordable units on the
Whether we get more
list.
money or more units.
Especially for the elderly.
Yeah, that's our issue.
Our goal.
Our problem area.
So I have a question. So if the planning board has fashioned the article and they're having a public hearing based on what they've already started advertising, are you going to propose changing the warrant article before it goes to town meeting? Because it's a planning board article.
But you wouldn't change the article. You might change the appendix that the town is asked to vote on. But that's the whole purpose of having the public hearings.
Right.
Is to give input so that when the planning board presents the bylaw that they want, it will be reflective of what they heard at the meetings. But it wouldn't affect the article.
Do we want to ask Bill to bring the question to the planning board during the hearings that?
Yeah, I mentioned it.
We'd like to have them vet out the 62?
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so I'll come back and report to you on that.
All right.
Anything else on that you got questions on?
No, that was really the only one.
All right, the last one is the wireless facilities bylaws. This is a little complicated. So I think the genesis of this was, we had that
Micro
cell, they came, they wanted to put these poles in the right of ways. And our current cell tower bylaw deals with like the cell tower, which is your typical cell tower, the 150 foot, large infrastructure off the road with setbacks and fall zones and all this stuff. This isn't that creature anymore. So Dan, I don't know can't remember his last name, but Dan sits on the planning board, actually is in the business of cellular wireless communication. So I'll read the description here. This article is to create a new bylaw for small cellular micro wireless communications equipment, whether on its own pole or other structure, because it can also be on existing buildings or existing structure. This will regulate and define the permitting process. As with this new technology, the terminology, setbacks, and physical structure is much different than the traditional cell phone tower. Due to recent FEC rulings, it is recommended that this should be a separate bylaw. Although not a requirement, this type of communication equipment often exists within the towns or states right-of-way, and this bylaw will focus on a process to minimize the possible adverse visual effects. The planning board will be the special permit granting authority. The next part, which is still for debate in italics, is also these micro wireless communication equipment usually exists the strength of them is they exist in a grid, a dense network.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that's still open is, in addition, the application will require a submission of a master plan for all future locations. They don't just come and do onesie, twosie thing. They say, hey, over the next 10 years, we want to put 20 of these poles in your community, they're gonna be here.
Right.
Is this technology also typically relies on dense grid of similar equipment? So there's still some things to talk about, but it's a little complicated because they were gonna modify the bylaw, but they're gonna do a new bylaw. And I think Dan sort of took a bylaw from a town that made sense and has modified it to work with our town. And maybe Donna, you can add to my comments, please.
So Dan and Patrick and I met about a week ago to talk over the draft bylaw. We are working on trying to get it in shape. What we're talking about is an FCC ruling that went into effect in January and preempted a lot of local regulation of these small wireless facilities, is how it's defined in the FCC ruling. And it has imposed upon communities very short timeframes within which they can review applications, and it has also limited the amount of money that you can charge in an application fee, and these application fees apply for all local permits. So not only the application fee to the the planning board for the special permit, but you're talking about the conscom permits, you're talking about the building permit itself. Any kinds of local permits all are covered by a very small fee that's now deemed by the FCC to be reasonable, which is essentially $100 per small wireless facility. Anything over that, communities have to prove that the charge you are trying to impose is reasonable. It also changed how communities can impose aesthetic standards. If you are going to impose aesthetic standards, which is highly recommended, you have to do so by April 15th to apply for applications that you might get before April 15th. If you get an application after April 15th and you don't have an aesthetic standard in place, then you don't get to apply aesthetic standards. The problem is nationally, nobody has come up with model aesthetic standards, and that requires real engineering techniques, capabilities that very, very few communities have. Maybe Los Angeles, maybe New York City, but not Hamilton, Mass. So we're looking for some kind of aesthetic standards that can be modeled, that we can model our standards on. FCC is making it really, really difficult for communities to deal with this. At the moment, we do not have bylaws that allow us to deal with it at all. So we're trying to get proactive. We're trying to get something in place. We know we won't have everything in place by April 15th, but if we can get the zoning bylaw in place and have within it authority for the planning board to adopt regulations that will include aesthetic standards, that's what we're going for.
Luckily, the current application was withdrawn.
Yes.
On prejudice, so.
Which
So
means
we
they'll be
bought
coming
ourselves
back.
some time.
Right.
Which means they'll be coming back.
This is the
We
second.
bought
This
ourselves some time.
will be the third time they come back. So-
And I assure you, from what we're seeing from our other clients, all of the developers are well aware of the limitations on municipalities imposed by the FCC.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
From what I understand, the FCC-driven rules come from the deployment of 5G requires 10 to 100 times the number density of poles as current poles. So there's a lot more poles, so they see by a local community imposing $1,000, pick a $500 fee or whatever it is, times tens or hundreds of times what they already do, it becomes prohibitive to deploy the technology. So they're clearly rolling this out. I think from our standpoint, my question is, the first time we tried to administer cellular communications in the last century, we basically stopped it from deploying in our town. And we missed a deployment of technology that everybody wants and needs to use. So does this bylaw help us get to, so we don't miss the next generation of technology? Because or we're
I mean, you're talking about the one that we didn't have it high enough, so we had 100 feet, so we had to change to 150, is that what you're talking about?
That was one of the aspects, but yeah, we basically engineered it in a way so that there wasn't cell towers in our town.
They said you could have cell towers.
Right,
it's gotta
but-
be this
And
tall.
now, I'm not a fan of having, towers all over the
Right.
place, but if we miss the next generation of technology deployment because of this, I mean, if all the other towns are doing the exact same thing, then I guess we ought to jump on the bandwagon.
Couple of things. These aren't tower-based telecommunications facilities or wireless facilities. They are pole-based, and to
Structure-based.
constitute small wireless facilities, there is a limit of the height.
Right.
It's
And they-
50
But they
feet,
need
but-
power, and sometimes they're on existing telephone poles, so they gotta get wires from poles to another pole. So
No, they're wireless. So they're not creating, what they are is if you say, they're like these boxy antennas that are kind of like this. And if you go to, what's it called? Anyway, lots of pictures of them on the web if you go to look for. But they're antennas that will sit on top of existing poles or new poles if they get in place, or on the corners of buildings or some other place. But they do not have wires between them. They do talk.
I think this, Scott's
No, but
talking that
the power
they've got a
source.
power source. So
Yeah, power
typically
source.
we've got
We did
a cell
clarify.
tower
Yeah, the
with a
power source
generator,
is-
et cetera. This is getting power from a national grid line on a telephone pole, either that it's on or if it's across the
Just so you
street
know, Don,
from
we
it.
did
it's-
clarify in the last permit application that if they put a new pole up, they would actually run a power line from that pole to the nearest power line. So there would be a power line that would run to that pole.
Except, under aesthetic standards, you can require that the power line go to some kind of
But right now
junction
we-
box or something underneath.
Right now, we can't, right?
Now we
we
can't because
can't.
we don't have the standards.
Gives us that ability to do that.
But yes, that's one of the things that they really encourage communities to do, to look at that kind of camouflage that one can do for
Yeah, I
that.
don't think our objective is to block it, as may have been done in the past, but just that we can help it be well done in town. So like the pole that came, the applicant that came forward wanted to put the pole, I believe,
Right
on
next
the,
to another, yeah.
on the complete opposite
Opposite side.
side of the road of where all the poles were.
Yeah.
So that didn't make any sense to anybody. It was like, can't you just put it across the street
You would never
on
see
a
it,
pole?
right.
So I don't think it's, but I agree with Scott, we have to write it properly so that we don't lose the technology, but we also are very aware of our aesthetics, like that. Add it to an existing pole, you're not building another pole across the street and running wires across the street, and I don't even know why so.
Who does this aesthetic standard? Who? Is there, the planning board's gonna write it?
No, the planning board wouldn't have the capability to write it. It's going to have to be done by engineers. And so actually I had talked with Patrick. I've also talked nationally, getting some of the municipal associations. MMA should be helping every community in the state do this. This is a huge problem for everybody.
Do we need a budget for?
Well, no, we're going to try to steal our aesthetic standards from others. So, we're looking at what's Los Angeles up to, what's Miami up to see what some of these ones that do have budgets for this stuff can share with us. But I did want to make a point, again, going back to the issue about are we going to miss on this technology? The FCC has taken care of that problem for the developers.
Right.
We cannot prohibit it, and we cannot make our bylaw inherently unreasonable. So we need to have objective standards. If we don't, then we're going to get this imposed
Want to
upon
have some
us.
teeth to be able to say, hey, put it on that side of the street. Because they got permission for
Yes.
the right of way. We had no ability to do anything. Now we can say, put it on the other side of the street, don't run the wire overhead, and show me where the next 10 are going to go.
Yes,
Trying
exactly.
to have a little bit of teeth, where we have none right now.
That seems sensible to me.
So I have this version, which is like 7 pages. They're going to vote on it again. Once again, I'm not sure if we're prepared to vote tonight, or we want to wait for the planning board to have their,
I'd like to hear on each of these things, there's gonna be public hearings.
Yeah. I'm fine with waiting on all three of these, but I think Bill's done a great job with the summaries, and they'll be fairly close
it'll
to
be
what we
close
end
to
up
what these
with.
are.
Thank you.
All right, page 7 of our, is the 4-1, which is Affordable Housing Trust
Yep.
bylaw. So I'll just read that one as well. I don't have the language of that yet. I don't know if you have that. Jordan sent it to me. Page 7.
If I've got it, I don't remember it offhand.
I'll tell you what it
so.
is, right? The article seeks to amend the current structure of the Hamilton Affordable Housing Trust in 2 ways. Number 1, the quorum will be changed from 4 to 3, because right now it's 4, and it becomes very difficult to have meetings sometimes. And you only need 3 votes to have a, there's no vote that requires 4.
Right.
And then the second part is all 5 voting members will be required to be residents of the town of Hamilton. The town manager is welcome to be a non-voting participant of discussion, but will not count towards the required quorum.
All makes sense to me. You okay with that, Joe?
Absolutely perfectly fine.
Any
with
questions on that one? Now, once I haven't seen the language yet, but that is the gist of it. So once again, we
Oh,
can
yeah,
vote
we
once
see
we
the
see the language, but anybody have any questions on the concept of it?
I agree with the concept.
Yeah, we've talked about this several times,
Okay.
so
All right, so I'll get the
the
final
intent is right.
Okay, so I'll get the final language so we can vote on it, but my guess we'll vote favorably on that as well.
I'm just thinking of helping FinCom out. You just want to take a straw poll?
Sure.
Just,
I make a motion, we vote favorably to amend the Hamilton Affordable Housing Trust in the both the quorum number and the 5 voting members being a town of Hamilton residents.
We're just doing a straw poll vote, right?
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
All those in favor, say, raise your hand.
All right, everybody's in favor, straw poll, just until we
Yep.
really see the language.
Yep.
That's all I had.
Perfect, thank you, Bill.
There's one more that you're doing, I think.
I've got acceptance of streets bylaw, 4-2. And Joe and I have talked about this a little bit, and I've gone back and forth with Patrick a little bit, and Tim will weigh on in it, but we're thinking that it won't be ready for this town meeting. Originally, when we looked at the road acceptance, it was just pretty much the road dimensions and usability of the road.
Cleaning up what's there.
Yeah, cleaning up what was there. But in further discussion with this board and with the people I just mentioned, we're talking a little more infrastructure, what lies underneath the road, new water lines, et cetera. And then also figuring out, because we wanted to include trash and recycling and stuff besides just the surface of the street. So then we need to figure out with our contract with Casella, modifications of that and cost to taxpayers, and then also people that have applied or started the application process for road acceptance, which developments do get plowing and trash pickup, et cetera now, and kind of getting all that data together to really look at it as a whole, and we don't have all that yet, so not quite fully baked.
I agree, yeah, because I think you're,
So
you really look at that comprehensively.
I thought the planning board and Patrick was bringing this forward to reduce the town's liability. So is there any way we can vote the main concept, which was
The money.
the money? We don't wish to pay 50% to bring your roads to standard, to get them accepted. That was the main
That
premise.
was the genesis of it, right?
Yeah, and
So
so.
you want to a quick stopgap, right, while we look at the bigger picture? I don't have a problem with that.
I mean, I think we
That's-
should fix that and then
So-
move forward. You're leaving the liability on the books again.
Someone might jump again now,
So-
hey, let's do this quick before they change.
Before they change.
Can I ask, so a road acceptance would have to be approved by town meeting because it's accepting land?
Currently?
No, so typically, a couple of different things. We have an acceptance of streets bylaw that sets forth what we need in order to accept a street. We don't accept land, we accept an easement, and yes, that would require a town meeting vote.
And we have no proposals for this annual town meeting for road acceptances, and the goal would be to have this ready for a special town meeting in the fall?
That would be the goal, yeah.
So, I mean, so the likelihood that we're leaving ourselves exposed on accepting a road that we're, under the current bylaw, is negligible, almost non-existent. But I agree with Allison, I want to get this cleaned up sooner than later. I would say that our goal would be to have something ready for a special town meeting so that, the town doesn't have any liability that it doesn't want to take on.
Other thoughts? I know Allison's.
No, if we're not, there's nothing active,
Right.
but if we're not going to be really ready, then.
I don't want to bring it
then
forward if we're not ready.
that's pushing it.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess, to Allison's point, if we kind of carve off and just do the 50% to 100% on the
Right.
people on the road,
And
then
if
it's.
we're talking about priorities, I'd rather hear from Tim about what's going with water and the water
Yeah.
treatment plant and the paving project. Those are multi-million-dollar ones that we know of.
Yeah. Jeff, any thoughts?
No, nothing bad.
Bill, did you weigh in?
I go either way.
Either way. I guess I don't know if I wanted, like, I agree with Allison, it would be nice that we could take the liability off the books, but it's been there for,
Since 1998 or something?
since 1998. And another 6 months and getting it all ironed out. I don't know if I'd want to bring it twice, basically, to town meeting.
Right.
Well, if it's not right and it doesn't pass, then we gotta wait.
And we gotta
wait a couple of years.
Wait a couple of years, right.
No, this is not a zoning bylaw.
Not as
Oh,
zoning.
okay. It's a town bylaw.
I think let's wait. Wait for the fall.
All right, so, do you want to make a motion to wait till fall ATM? And take this off the warrant, Jeff?
I make a motion that we postpone action on Article 6-1 till the fall.
4-2.
4-2.
4-2?
Sorry.
Where are we?
The streets.
Jesus.
And is your motion to remove it from the
Or dash
warrant?
two.
On the same
Yeah.
page.
Yep. Did you say the motion to remove it from the warrant?
Yes.
Perfect.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. All right, we did 5-1 already, the OPEB trust. Now we're on 6.
That's what we're waiting for. So we, big warrant there.
Is that our conclusion there? Is that it?
Well, I think we could talk about consent.
Yeah.
Like, I think we need to put a lot of.
What can we put in the consent?
There's a lot of articles.
Yeah. All right, so let's start from the top again.
We also have on our agenda that we were going to discuss appointment of the town clerk
yeah,
as
yeah,
part of the
gotta do that.
warrant.
Yeah. Let's do that, and then we'll go through the consent to see if what we can put in the consent. Is there anything else that we missed?
I found my agenda. I moved so many things around.
No. And we haven't, just to touch base, has anyone heard of any citizens petitions?
I heard from Jeff Mielek.
Jeff said he hadn't heard anything, and we haven't heard anything from Andrea. So, all right, appointment of town clerk. It wasn't on our warrant because at last meeting we had discussed, we weren't sure if it would go on the warrant, so now we're gonna discuss it and see if it goes on the warrant.
So I had asked, as part of tonight, that you include in the package the pros and cons of that and the study that was done, but I don't see it in any of the selectmen's packets.
We have that from last time, though?
We have it from last
You
time.
didn't have the study from last time? No, I asked for a number of things to be included that weren't included, but those were specific to this topic, and I'm just curious why they're not in the packet.
Study, we all got the study.
The study we all got, the pros and cons we all got from last time, but they weren't in this week's packet.
The study was not as part of our packet last week, so to make it part of the record for this week, it would have to be included in our packet, and that's why I asked it to go in the packet.
I mean, I don't understand the relevance of the study. It has nothing to do with our town. It's a great concept and a great process, so we can talk about the process, but the study itself is irrelevant. They had a multi-week, I mean, it's a great process. I welcome the process, but the study itself is irrelevant to our town.
So my issue is, and I appreciate that feedback, but my issue is that you bring things to the agenda, and you bring information that you'd like included in the packets that go to the Board of Selectmen, and they get included.
Yeah.
I asked for it to be included.
Yeah.
And I asked for other things.
I mean, I read it, so yeah, for me, it was included, but I understand what you're saying.
But it's not included to the residents.
Right, no, I understand, yeah.
Okay?
Right, and I get it.
So that is the dilemma, and that's why I'm bringing it forward, is if you wrote your summaries and you brought them forward and they're here in the packet. I brought something forward for tonight's agenda, and none of it has been, none of it is here.
Correct.
And so I'd like to understand that.
I don't know what's relevant.
I'll say that with our agenda tonight, some of the things that you submitted, and I probably should have gone through and included the things you included last time, but some of it I didn't think was relevant to the topic tonight.
Okay.
So I did not include it.
But you put the agenda topic, so I don't know that it's,
Well, how
and
about
I
if you
could be
talk
wrong,
about the
I could be
study?
wrong, it may
Yeah.
not be
How
your
about-
role to
Tell us
determine
what
we can bring
Why
forward.
don't you use this time to talk about that study and what the town did and learned, and so you get and we'll,
Try to print out.
it'll be out on the record.
Right.
I'd like it to be included in the next week's agenda. I'd like that when I request something, that it's respected. That's my dilemma. But yes, the pros and cons of the study were that the role mostly is an administrative role and not a policy-seeking role. So they no longer saw the benefits of an election position versus an appointed position. And it actually did a really good job on it, and it's unbiased. It's not politicalized in this town. It just had some information
I read
that's
this. I read
proven.
the study. I agree with you. I think it was a great study. But I think what was great about the study was the process of the study. They went to town meeting. They voted to study it. They agreed to study it. They had 7 meetings. They met. They discussed it. They did their own pros and cons of relevance to the town, and then they came up with a report. So I think it's a great process. And we talked about it last week. I think we should go through this process. I wasn't ready to do it
Well, I've been
now,
asking
though.
to go through the process for years.
But we just started talking about it like 2 weeks
No,
ago.
you may have
I
as a
did,
selectman,
right, I did,
but
right,
this has
yeah.
been in front of the board
it's
for a
new
long time.
For me, it's new for me, so I'm not prepared to.
So that's my
Right,
dilemma
yeah,
again.
I'm not prepared to put it on the warrant until I have time to
Right.
talk about it.
Right. And I think to Bill's point about the study, and Allison, you sharing the study with us, I think is proof that I think some type of a study is warranted. And I think it needs to be more than just us discussing it at this table here. I think we need to include community members, et cetera, to vet everything.
And like last time I asked, I kind of agree, I said, what's the benefit of having it be elected versus appointed? And Jeff, brought up something that I hadn't thought about before, which was it's sort of like having a mole in town, which I never so there is feedback out there. It might be helpful to hear from people, because I'd never heard that sort of opinion before. I use it not
Right,
like a mole, but it's a
and
citizen within the walls
And
of
to
town
Jeff's
hall.
point, not just the mole thing, but if it's an elected position, the town manager's doesn't have any sway. You're not a town employee, so the town manager doesn't have any control over filings and elections and stuff like that, whereas the town manager has influence over those things. But
So I was struggling too, but I think I need to sort of,
I
think it's worthwhile talking about. I don't think it's ready for this. For me, in my opinion, it's not ready for this town meeting and this warrant article. And I think
Should we ask town meeting if they, following the example then, should we ask town meeting if they want us to put together this committee?
I don't know that our town, we need to do that, but that's a good question.
And then
Do we need to go to town to ask to study it, or
part of
do we
the
just study it?
education process that we're looking at it, we're paying attention to it, and we want,
I don't know why they had to go to the town to do that's one thing I didn't understand, why they had to go to the town to
You
do
didn't
this.
have to.
But they did.
There are things you
No, we don't have to in this town.
Right.
I don't know why.
no.
But I don't know why that
But on
town
one
did.
side, we're saying we should follow their process, and on the other side, we're saying, but we don't need to follow their process.
No, I think we should follow that process.
I think we're just saying we need to look into it.
Being a 7-week study, which I think, or 7-meeting study, and forming a committee, however we form that committee.
Right.
And do the study, I think we need to do that process. I think our town may set that up differently, whether it's a town meeting that does that or something else, but, all right, but.
I don't know, and I've made some phone calls, and people that were on the government study committee, I mean, had strong opinions about why it should be elected, but then through the discussion, completely changed their opinion on whether it should be elected or not. So, I mean, I don't know, I feel like we have talked about, Allison's right, we have talked about this a lot. It was almost on the warrant the last time we had town meeting. So, I mean, we've talked about a lot. I think we need to take action.
For me, no. For me, I've only talked about it in public meetings for 2 weeks. That's it. So, in
So it was
fairness to
brought to you as a resident
Yeah,
last
right,
year.
right, but
This
not-
is not
right.
new news.
Right.
So you think we ought to form a study committee?
No, I think we should put it to the voters.
To form a study committee?
No. To vote on whether or not, on the basis of appointed versus elected, we should bring it to our residents, whether or not they think that position should be appointed or elected, because you're closing the window for the residents so that you would stay status quo by prolonging it even longer for probably 4 additional years. And I don't find that that's in the benefit of the residents. I think the residents should decide, based on our election cycles and everything else that's going on, it should be brought to the residents currently, the pros and the cons of the position, and what it means for the residents, looking at it both ways financially and the impacts, and have them vote. That's what I believe.
I just don't feel
Because
it's enough
otherwise, you're
time.
4 years away from doing anything,
If we don't do something in April?
pretty much. You're limiting your calendar significantly.
I guess for me, I don't think that the public will have enough information. I think of how much we struggle with planning board articles and other things, and this is a change in our government structure. I don't think there's enough time and input from the community to put it on the warrant.
I totally agree with you. I think that Allison's brought up a lot of good points related to it, but the public input and discussion, I wasn't part of the government study committee, I kind of remember, but it was a long gestating thing of what should be change our local form of government. And this isn't as fundamental as that, but it's still changing an elected position to an appointed one. I think that's significant. And if you wanted to form a study group that brought it to the special town meeting, and then there's 6 months of runway of what is it? What are the trade-offs? Here's other towns, this is what they did, how does it apply the same to us?
I would almost, sorry to interrupt, Scott, but I would almost add, there's people in the community who've talked about the planning board elected versus appointed, and other boards similar. I would almost venture that, people would have opinions about that too, but we have one specific thing that we're looking at here, but.
Or ZBA.
ZBA as well, right.
I don't know, I'm not a big a fan of.
ZBA is appointed,
No,
but
but I like.
as far as elected versus appointed on
It's that discussion. I'm not saying.
general government.
I'm more a fan of confusing one thing at a time.
Right.
But that confusion and that you create and unravel through the public discussion is going to take time. And I don't think we've done that due diligence to give it the time.
I agree. I have no problem discussing it and doing it. I'm just not ready now, and I think I for the things I put in front of town meeting, it's been because we didn't build
And I
consensus.
like
We didn't
Jeff's
let- we didn't
idea.
let the community, I put two things in front of town meeting that both failed, and it
Right.
wasn't because cottage housing is still something this community wants to do.
Right.
But they just haven't built consensus and haven't gotten the knowledge out there, so.
Right.
So we need to do a better job, so I would think that would be, we haven't learned our lesson if we just rush this to town meeting, so.
And I don't
let's
know
form
how
a committee.
legal it is, but
And let's-
yeah, I like Jeff's idea. I brought up last week too, of asking the town meeting who's there, saying, as part of your report. I don't know if it's legal to do straw polls, and I was like, are people, just by show of hands, what would you think if we went forward with something like this? To get some indication of
You know, just do straw
of
poll.
support, or another survey, or I don't know, other techniques, but
That'd be interesting.
it's something that I think has a lot of people have strong feelings about.
Yeah.
And therefore, it needs time to be vetted.
Yeah.
I mean, people have strong feelings about the budget too, but we've got a budget calendar that took 6 months of development, and we do it the same time we do it every year.
I don't disagree, other than the fact that it's been brought up and we haven't done anything to move it
Well-
forward. And we have a long-standing history, not just in this, but in a lot of things, of not moving things forward. And saying, okay, we'll do it at the next meeting. For example, we know our gas tanks out back are over 30 years old, they're past their life expectancy. I brought it forward for our last STM. You said, Allison, it's too quick. We can't do it now. I promise we'll bring it to ATM. Let us look into it. And I don't hear or see anything. And that's what I see happening more. And I feel strongly that there's a need to bring this in front of the residents. But we have a tendency to do this historically. And this is not new. And that's my opinion, and that's why I'm expressing that strongly. And I've spoken to a number of residents and gotten the feedback from them.
So, is the feeling that we don't put it on the warrant, but we talk about some type of a study, research group looking into it, moving forward? Is that the gist of it?
I think Allison should make recommendations, like, just a suggestion, a motion, put this on the warrant or not.
Okay.
Motion to create a study committee.
I make
to
a
do-
motion that we put to the town residents to vote on changing the town clerk's position in the town of Hamilton from that of an elected position to a appointed position, similarly to what was done with the treasurer collector's position with the town of Hamilton a number of years ago.
All right, anyone second?
For just about almost identical reasons.
Second, anyone?
Second.
All right. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain? All right, so.
What do you do with the 2 yes, 2 no, and an abstention, Donna?
You need a majority vote to pass
Okay.
a motion, and this did not get a majority vote.
Thank you.
Do you care to make another motion per
Nope.
Scott's suggestion?
No, thank you.
Okay.
If you'd like to make another motion, then you feel free. I don't feel the need at this time.
All right. Let's switch back to the warrant. All right. Our consent voting, I think, I would say just right off the bat, the 2 OPEB articles,
How if you walk through the numbers? Do it
just go right down.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got,
2-1?
yeah, 2-1, prior year bills in the consent.
That's 4/5, right? So you can't be in consent.
Can, just has to
Make a motion that we do this
pass
at
by
a
that
later
month.
time, and we adjourn since it's 11:15.
It's $10:45.
I think this is going to take us 5 minutes.
Okay, I adjourn. Thank you, though.
2-7 maybe? I'm just thinking they're not,
Yeah, I would say 2-7.
the 2-9?
Revolving funds. I would say,
FinCom hasn't even voted on these yet, and you're making a motion on how to combine them.
correct.
Make a recommendation.
We're making a recommendation.
Yeah, I agree.
2-9 seems fine, as long as there's no controversy over the revolving fund for the, that seems fine to me.
2-11?
Yeah, 2-11 for sure. The next with the zoning ones, probably not.
No.
Affordable housing, no.
5-1?
Yeah, 5-1.
We skipped all the 2-13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
A couple of those are new articles. You're gonna have people wanting to get an explanation on the capital stabilization fund,
Yeah, I think all those, yeah, the cap stabilization fund, there's some transfers and stuff in there that we'll need to explain, I think.
Okay. 2-17, that for water distribution service.
That might,
No.
you're asking to amend a vote of a prior town meeting.
Yeah,
I think
no.
you're gonna wanna have a
No.
discussion on that.
I would say that's probably it,
That's it.
nah.
right?
It's gonna be a long meeting.
I'm just figuring
Yeah, we just did
Yeah.
4 hours right now.
Yeah. Right. If you're just thinking of our meeting here, we're 4 hours into it without major discussions from the floor.
I'll just mention that typically we've left the consent motion identification to the moderator, so Jeff may have some further thoughts
Yeah,
on
we're
what's
just kinda
happened in the past.
Trying to compartmentalize a little bit.
Given the feedback
Right.
we've had about the length of the,
Yeah.
town meeting, that's all we're trying to do is come up with a recommendation.
I think we've typically done the Hamilton Development Corp. as part of the consent motion
Oh.
as well.
Okay.
2-10, because it's usually
yeah,
the same
that's a good
amount,
idea.
the
All right.
65,000.
Yep.
Oh, so he may have some other thoughts for
Yeah,
you.
yep. Thanks, Donna.
Any other comments on that? I think that's all prudent. You know, we'll recommend it to the FinCom and to Jeff, the moderator. And that's pretty much it. Good job tonight, everybody.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Anyone want to second that motion to adjourn?
Second.
I'm on a third.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. You stuck
you.
with us.
Thank you.
Yep.
That took 3 minutes.
A lot of work to do. Thank you.
Just those two?
Yep.